Oh, it's foamy.
Nice. I don't think you heard anything from mine because mine is different. It's a little bougie.
Another different one, huh?
It's in a bottle, so that's why why you didn't hear it. There wasn't like a theme related thing, but I could turn it into a theme related thing. So the beer that I have this week is it's partly, I mean, it's very fancy. So it's got like this gold thing around the top, and it's very fancy, and also like a couple of the movies this is our second episode of the Marvel series. There are 2 big movies at the end of it that we'll talk about today.
Yep.
They were very expensive movies to make. This was a very expensive beer to buy.
Oh,
this
okay. So that's your tie-in?
This one normal size beer bottle was about the price of a normal 6-pack. This was $9.
Holy shit.
And it's because another thing that ties it in, it has a lot going on in it. It's a lot of layers. So enough talking about it. Let's get into it. It's the Luctus Viribus barrel-aged sour ale from Avery Brewing Company.
Jesus.
And they're number 3 in their barrel-aged series. So it's where do I even start with this? It's 50% ale aged in tequila barrels, and it's 50% ale aged in Cabernet Sauvignon barrels. It was bottled in February 2016, which is when Phase 3 basically started. So those are my tie-ins.
All right. I
have no idea if it's going to be any good or not.
Well, now I'm curious. Now you're on the spot.
It's good. You would not like it. It's very much a sour. It's a barrel-aged sour ale, basically. So,
yep.
But it's pretty good.
Well, mine, the way the tag at the liquor store said the title was Comeback Wit. And I was like, oh, Iron Man's got tons of witty comebacks. So I bought it for that.
Yeah.
But it's actually just called Comeback.
Okay.
It's by St. Arnold Brewing in Houston. It's a Belgian style wit.
Gotcha.
So, but it still ties in just fine because I would hope at this point the world has watched Endgame.
Yeah.
So you know that Comeback is like
That's the whole point.
Part.
Yeah. It's the goal.
But we'll get into that. So,
yeah.
And it says on the can, crisp and citrusy. And it is.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Like, I think you would really like this one, actually, Jake. This is very summertime beer.
Nice.
I feel like I need to be out on the porch.
Yeah, and summertime's appropriate. The day that this episode comes out is going to be Independence Day.
That's
for
right.
The filthy colonists in the States. If you're listening elsewhere in the world, disregard that.
How are we not, like, shut down?
Oh, we will be, my friend. We hinted last time that we'll probably be canceled after this episode, so it'll be good.
Okay, but being canceled after this, if I get canceled for having an opinion about a movie, it'll just prove how sad
people have been canceled for less, my friend.
I know. But my reasons for not being a big fan have nothing to do with cancel culture. Right. But we'll get into that in like 4 or 5 movies.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was going to ask you, speaking of July 4th, Independence Day, do you have like a favorite go-to 4th of July Independence Day movie to watch?
I do.
What is it?
It's Team America World Police.
I knew you would say that, honestly. I was like, it's either going to be cliche Independence Day or it's going to be Team America.
Yeah, it's Team America. Every now and again, I'll throw Jaws in because that takes place on 4th of July weekend.
Yeah.
Very rarely will I actually watch Independence Day on Independence Day. No, I considering I find the state of our world or country or whatever, very sadly satirical. I feel like I can only celebrate the day really by watching satire. And now I am watching this in the morning as soon as I wake up. Well, this comes out on the day, so
this morning
I'll be doing like an Instagram thing for it. Netflix's America the movie is officially out.
I've never heard of it.
Have you seen the preview for this? You need to see the preview for this. Okay. It's an animated hard R comedy about George Washington and America.
Okay.
So it's a satire.
Yeah.
It just looks so ridiculous. Like Jack cartoon dudes. You're
into it already.
Immediately when I saw the commercial, I was like, oh my God, Jake and I need to watch this movie.
Yeah. If there's Jack dudes and guns, I'm into it.
And it is out now. So I am 100% ready to watch this. And that's what I'm going to watch tomorrow. But yeah, I tend to pop World Police in.
Classic.
Pretty much out the gate. It's too funny. Yeah. It's too funny.
That's a great answer.
What about you?
I do tend to hold Independence Day for that reason. I watched Independence Day for sure. Also watched The Patriot. There's not that many movies about the American Revolution, which is kind of funny.
That's true.
Yeah. If you like musicals or Hamilton, then people should not watch Hamilton. They should watch 1776. It's a musical about the American Revolution, but and it's better than Hamilton. Don't at me. So, yeah.
All right. By the way, just looking up the America the Motion Picture. That's the actual title. The Netflix thumbnail for it is George Washington holding the middle finger out, but it's all blurred. And it's a chainsaw-wielding George Washington teams with beer-loving bro Sam Adams to take down the Brits in a tongue-in-cheek riff on the American Revolution.
Okay. I'm into it.
So I'm watching that in the morning.
Yeah, same here. That'll good way to put you in the mood.
Right.
All right.
So, do you want to get into this nonsense?
Yes, we should get into it. I imagine part 2 of Marvel might be kind of big, especially the final ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's dive into this. We left off on
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man, right?
Yeah, we haven't done Ant-Man yet. So going in, Ant-Man's the last one in Phase 2, and getting into that before we jump into Phase 3.
Yes, sir. All right. So I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Ant-Man. I think Ant-Man was... I think it was done really well. I think it's like the most family friendly out of all the Marvel films.
Yeah. I'd say so.
And its sequel, I feel, are like, oh, these are the Marvel family movies. Like, you can watch them with anyone and they're going to get a kick out of it. Paul Rudd as a superhero, though. I remember when he got cast, I think everyone had the same response of like, Paul Rudd? Like, we love Paul Rudd, but Paul Rudd's not a superhero.
Yeah. And you knew you were going to see him next to all of these other people that we've been talking about. And you're like, he seems like the black sheep in this situation.
He does. I also remember when they announced they were making it, I never read the Ant-Man comics. So I had no knowledge on Ant-Man prior to the film. But I was excited because Edgar Wright was originally going to write and direct it.
Yeah.
And that made me excited. But then he left the project due to creative differences, and that made me worried. But they kept production obviously going. I think this is one of the few movies where change in director did not hurt the film.
Yeah.
I think they maintained the silliness of it. They embraced the silliness of it. You know, the guy shrinks down to the size of an ant, if not smaller.
Yeah.
Sometimes way bigger. But But it was really interesting. It was not what I was expecting at all. I think the father-daughter aspect of the whole film is what really makes Ant-Man work.
Yeah, for sure.
And letting Paul Rudd, you can tell they let Paul Rudd just have fun with what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And that's always a joy. But yeah, I personally really enjoy Ant-Man. I didn't think I was going to. I thought I was going to hate it. Mm-hmm. It's like, this movie's probably going to suck. And then I saw it and was like, if you're watching the Marvel films, Ant-Man is the movie where you're going to enjoy every part of it. Mm-hmm. It's all fun. It's very silly. They embrace that part. It's like one of the few that does not try to force the comedy. It feels very natural. I think that has everything to do with Paul Rudd probably helping direct improv and just silliness on set. But Ant-Man.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I'm obviously a big fan of Paul Rudd, and I think he's hilarious, and I like everything he does. Yeah. So I'm probably more into it than a lot of people are. But he's great, and you're right. Him playing a thief who's trying to be legit enough to like take care of his daughter. The family aspect is certainly there and very strong, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, when we did our family episode. I came very close to putting Ant-Man on my family films list because it's one of the few of the Marvels where I don't feel I have to watch the entire thing to enjoy it. And it's one that, my daughter and I, we can just pop that in at any time, and you don't have to have previous context. They mentioned the Avengers once. Yeah. And then there's a silly fight between Ant-Man and Falcon, which might be one of the best Marvel fight scenes ever. But
it's an interesting kind of Marvel starts doing this now later in the series. They've been establishing the main hitters, and now they have to introduce new ones as well to like build up those. And so this is, because it's an origin story, it's kind of isolated in that way, but they're anticipating obviously building it up to what it will be.
Yeah, and I think setting it in San Francisco really worked to its advantage because it's on the complete opposite side of where all the events of the Avengers are always taking place. Poor New York.
Right.
Poor New York.
Yeah, don't live there. That's the moral of the story.
Like, if there's ever an action film with like disastrous hero film or something, poor New York. Yeah. Poor New York. But I think it worked really well as an origin story. I did work with a guy for 8 years. This dude knew every comic there was extensively, and he like gave me a whole bunch of little insight into the Ant-Man character. And after I saw the movie before he did, and I had told him like, it's not about Hank Pym. And he was like, oh, so it's Scott Lang. And immediately I was like, oh my God, you just like ripped that out of thin air. And he goes, yeah, Scott Lang's great. Yeah. And he like, I remember him asking me if they did a couple little things or how did the character do in this kind of situation. I told him, he goes, oh, that's exactly like the comics. I feel when you get someone who loves the comic books so deeply, even those like real obscure characters, when they get excited about how a film is like handling them, the situations they're being put in, when they get that excited about it, I'm like, okay, the studio they did it. Yeah. They nailed it.
At least respecting source material, which is great.
Right. So yeah, Ant-Man, it's the entry of the Marvel films that I was like positive I was going to hate. I was positive. I was like, man, this movie's just going to suck. Yeah. And then it ends up being like one of the ones that I enjoy just so much. It's so goofy to me. I constantly have to chuckle at myself about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if Marvel was unsure when they started doing it, because it is the smallest budget of the whole series. And so they may have felt like it was a gamble, or it felt a little uneasy or whatever, but it's nice to have kind of a smaller, tighter movie anyway.
Yeah. I think it is kind of. I remember a lot of people thought it was a very odd choice to pick Ant-Man to be like, oh, he's going to eventually associate with the Avengers, if not be on the Avengers. For your general audience, very like, who is this guy? What's his importance? I kind of can't help but feel that around the phase 2 time or end of phase 2 going into phase 3 time, if they really had meticulously mapped every, like, okay, because of the importance of that character.
Yeah.
So I can't, like, binging it this week. I was like, man, this feels so, like,
intentional,
purposeful all of a sudden.
Yeah, for sure. He is very, not just one of the more powerful characters, but he, especially as we get getting towards the quantum zone and everything, it's a very important step in the right direction.
Yeah. So I loved Ant-Man. I really don't have anything like critical on it. I think it's such a joyful film.
Yeah.
It really is. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air. Because, Age of Ultron, although they win, it doesn't necessarily end on, like, a happy note. And then you get Ant-Man, which kind of like, okay, we can, there's something to feel good about. Of course, that leads into the complete separation of the whole team. But, I love Ant-Man.
I don't really have anything to complain about it either. The only thing I could say, I guess, is that I think this is where I started to be able to tell what the Marvel formula kind of is, that they have finally fully established this very successful but pretty safe way of making movies, and in a kind of a cookie cutter way, so that from now on all these other origin stories are going to feel pretty similar to how Ant-Man feels. I had a thought this week, actually, as I was watching network TV, which I haven't watched in ages, but I feel like Marvel movies do a lot of things that network TV kind of does, where it needs to appeal to a very wide general audience. It needs to not take too many risks, obviously not offend anybody or isolate anybody, and then they get a lot of people to buy tickets, obviously, get them invested for a couple movies, and they get them with merchandising and all these other things. So it's intentional, I guess, in that respect, but it feels different from me, who's generally more like a late night cable kind of guy.
Yeah.
Like, why are they not saying the F word in this movie? I don't understand.
I wouldn't say it's a critique on Ant-Man, but it's definitely the villain in Ant-Man becomes kind of your cookie cutter villain and kind of sets the stage for a lot of the villains, or at least maybe not sets the stage, but like you said, where you kind of catch on to the formula and all that.
Yeah.
The villain, the simplicity of a villain.
Yeah.
You know exactly how the villain's going to act. You know exactly how the villain's going to get, like, taken down. You know all of it, which is kind of a bummer, but I don't hold it against it too much because as 90% of superhero films, you know what you're getting going into it. I will say Phase 3 of Marvel did have a couple where it was kind of like, man, Marvel's got, like, no balls. They don't want to take risks. They don't want to, like, steer too far one way. Like, they are very, no, you stick with this. Luckily, they changed that, but we'll get into that later. But
they definitely, their main, which is a good thing and a bad thing, their main goal seems to be make fun movies, entertaining movies that anybody from any walk of life can go to and have a nice time. And that's a good thing, and it's a bad thing. It just kind of depends what you're into.
It's the Disney mentality.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it is. It's worked for Disney for ever.
Yeah. If it ain't broke.
Yeah, it's not broke. If they weren't making money, they would probably change the formula, but they continue to just dominate. So,
yeah.
All right.
So the fun thing about Ant-Man also is that it comes up right before Civil War, and then he gets to like kind of get that integration pretty quickly. He's not just hanging out on his own.
Right. Yeah, he's brought into the fold real fast. I think the way Paul Rudd played his interaction with like meeting Captain America and all that felt like, this is exactly how this character would respond to being told, hey, we got to go to Germany. Captain America needs your help. He'd be like, okay, am I really doing this?
Yeah, it felt very natural, which I like. I like about Paul Rudd. He feels very natural in general.
Yeah. So Civil War came out after Ant-Man.
Yeah, or as it's also known as Avengers 2.5. I always forget almost that it's the Captain America movie. It's based kind of an Avengers.
Because it is Avengers 2.5.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
I like it. Overall, I like it. I think it could be bigger or better, but the main conflict between Cap and Iron Man, which is what really matters, I think that's good. I think that Civil War in the comics is a very big deal, a very big point in the arc. And I think the movie does a pretty good job of distilling that down. Obviously, they haven't had as much time or as much buildup, but they get the main points across between what are their differing ideologies. I think you really understand Tony Stark believes this, and wants to solve it this way. Captain America believes this, he really wants to solve it this way, and they clash. Both good, both working towards the same goal, just differing about how to do it, basically. And so I think that works in this movie really well. So I end up really liking it. My main critique, I guess, is the fight in the empty airport. It feels a little gentle or flat to me, I guess. It could be more, especially considering all of those heroes and all of their powers and all of that stuff. So I would have liked it to be, I guess, more vicious or brutal, but it's pretty kid gloves, low stakes kind of thing.
The airport fight might be one of the biggest letdowns in superhero movies for me. I did not care for Civil War too much. Like, I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, and then the second time I saw it, I was like, I don't think I like Civil War. It just felt so too Avengery, not focused so much on Captain America to me. But that airport fight scene, even watching it this week, I'm still like, there are 12 characters on the screen, and they do like a Braveheart run towards each other. There's just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, to me, it just doesn't feel like there's, what's the word? I just lost it. Like, there's no intensity to the scene, really. It's a fun action scene, especially with like Spider-Man versus Winter Soldier and versus Falcon. And then, as you see all the different techniques of everyone's fighting style coming into play, that is fun. That is really cool. But it's between like 12 people. So I don't know. I always feel just let down by it. And I honestly can't help but think that they threw all the explosions that happened during that scene just to be like, something happened.
Yeah, it can't just be a handful of people standing around in a giant open tarmac. It's like, this is a little, we need to jazz it up a little bit.
Yeah. The movie as a whole, though, I have come to appreciate a lot more. I still think it's the weakest of the Captain America movies. maybe even Avenger movies. It might be the weakest of that because it is kind of known as Avengers 2.5.
Yeah, I would say it is the weakest of the Captain America movies. I think the Captain America movies may be the strongest group in the single hero movie list.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do agree with that.
It's a good movie. I think the conflict between Tony and Steve Rogers was handled really well. Their final fight between Bucky, Cap, and Iron Man, that fight,
that's a good fight.
Is incredible.
It's a much better fight.
And you want your brutality. Yeah. That fight sequence has some parts in it that are like good freaking God.
Yeah, I think that saves it mostly for me. If that also didn't work, then the whole thing would be a bust.
Right. But Civil War is an interesting movie because the timing of it is so perfect. And this is another moment of, obviously, this was deliberately planned because after Civil War, you get like solo films and then another, the final installment. Well, not the final, sorry. You get a third installment of a single hero before Thanos officially finally actually shows up. So Civil War is really well timed to me because the whole team is completely disassembled. No one trusts each other anymore. The government has taken control on how these heroes are supposed to, or how the government views they're supposed to act.
Yeah, I think it does a good job of relaying consequences of the movies that came before. So Age of Ultron, it does a good job of making the consequences of Ultron real, and the team is now having to deal with that in their own ways, and it causes a rift. And I think that build-up works well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's hard to differentiate which side I agree with more. And I think the movie does a good job of making that difficult for its viewers because you want to side with Iron Man because his conviction is so heavy right now with the consequences, and he's trying to figure out,
because it's his fault.
I keep making mistakes. I keep making mistakes. So how do we correct this? How do I correct this? And Tony has always done kind of extreme measures when it comes to correcting things. Whereas Captain America is very much like, we're here to help the world. We cannot be
He's very
governed. You cannot.
Unwaveringly principled. So even though this new situation has happened and there's new consequences, his base principles haven't changed, which is trust people. People are overall good. And
unless they're a government system. He has zero faith, zero trust in anyone that wears a suit and tie. But you understand why, because he just found out not too long before this, everything he thought he was doing was for S.H.I.E.L.D., for the good, and he found out, it was all for Hydra. So he's very untrustworthy to them, and he does make a good point of, like, what happens if we end up just becoming the government's, like, lackey? You know, what if they just decide to start taking people out, potential threats, which would just be a repeat of the events of Winter Soldier.
It's a very true to self, on-brand way to have Captain America deal with it, and is very much appropriate to talk about on the 4th of July, because it's basically his belief is basically that of the founding fathers of America, which is, don't put too much power all in one place. And if we give S.H.I.E.L.D. or the government or whoever too much power over us, then as like these massive humans and weapons and stuff, then that could easily be corrupted. So kind of just spread things out, make things a little more individual.
Right. And it doesn't help that the general selling point to them is, if you don't sign the accords, you become a war criminal. And
the government's very good at persuading people to do what they want.
So I feel like Steve just becomes so staunchly against it based on the principle of like, we cannot give this governing system all the power.
Right.
Because the Avengers are all powerful, you know, they're superpowered, they crazy powers. Right. So he doesn't trust how the government would potentially use that. And it kind of becomes true as the general uses Tony as his like kind of a hunting dog. Like, you have to go do this for me. You have to go do this. And it's tough to watch Tony go from being always in control to thinking he's in control, but really during Civil War he has zero control. Yeah,
working for a new boss.
Which I didn't really start catching on until the last few times that I've watched it. Of like, wow, actually the writing for Tony's side of this is really well done. Civil War does bring us one of the heaviest moments in the Marvel films, and that's Tony's parents.
Yeah.
Finding out that Bucky actually assassinated the parents is pretty rough, but how he does it is probably the worst part of it.
Yeah. That's a great part of the conflict, as well as Captain America, his best friend, did this terrible thing, but he still has to decide.
To his current
he still has to decide to stand up for him because he knows he's not the same person now and all that kind of stuff. But it's the conflict, I think, is really well done in those respects.
Yeah. And Civil War also brings us another new character. Of Black Panther shows up.
2 new characters. You kind of skipped over it, but
I did,
Spider-Man.
didn't I?
You mentioned it, but we didn't say this is.
I did mention him.
This is a big freaking deal that Spider-Man.
Spider-Man was a huge deal showing up in this because Sony was so like territorial of their property, which I understand.
Yeah,
Spider-Man is.
They're holding this little tiny island, and they're like seeing everything that's happening with the Avengers, and like, we need. Ideally merge that, and they end up doing it, but well, and that it was touch and go. They didn't know if they would.
Good on Marvel, good on Disney for getting this deal made, because honestly, if you read the comics, Spider-Man is like, comic book wise, he's kind of the central character. He's the one that is at the center of the whole conflict.
Yeah, it's a noticeable. There's a noticeable gap in just the Avengers in general that Spider-Man's not there.
Right. So it was really cool seeing Spidey show up. I think Tom Holland is a fantastic Spider-Man for that age that they were aiming for, of him still in high school and being naive and being kind of just forced into this world of superheroes and supervillains and having no clue how to actually process it. Tom Holland and Spider-Man. Spidey has always been, like, from childhood for me, one of my all-time favorite heroes. So every time there's a Spider-Man movie, except for Spider-Man 3, I'm happy and I'm excited. And I love that Tom Holland has really owned the character. I'm very curious to see what they're about to do with him.
I also appreciate
who knows what's
how
going
he
on.
Leaks key details constantly.
Which is why no one gives him full scripts. He's not allowed to talk to press now. He's like, and if he does, he has to have an actual babysitter to shut him up. I'm shocked his Twitter and all of his social media have not been shut down because he accidentally leaked the title for the final Spider-Man movie.
I'm surprised Disney hasn't been like, you know what? We own your phone now.
Right.
It is really cool, I think, and a big deal in Civil War how Iron Man brings in Spider-Man and kind of takes him under his wing. That seems like not a big deal in this movie, but it pays off over time, and certainly pays off by the end. A big deal. Well,
and it's so I don't know if you ever watched in the 90s, and good luck finding this, but you should try to find it and watch it because it's so good. The animated Spider-Man series that was on Fox Kids, along with like Batman animated and Superman animated. Well, Spider-Man also had this awesome cartoon, awesome series. Iron Man showed up pretty frequently in that show and was always trying to help Spider-Man, trying to coach him into here's how you need to be a hero. And so to see that translate into this film, I personally was really excited because it brought me back to like when I would watch those Saturday morning cartoons and Spidey and Iron Man would be in a battle together. It was cool. It was fun. I think giving them the, I guess, father-son kind of aspect, at least from Peter Parker's point of view, was really well done. I think giving it the Tony thinking it was a good idea to bring this kid in because he had a couple like little tricks that he could do and maybe I could help develop this kid, and then immediately kind of being like, nope, he's too young. I can't put him in this situation. Of course, Spider-Man is always in the situation.
Yeah. Well, he's a kid with a good heart.
But no, I really like the relationship between Tony and Peter. I think it was written well in all of their interactions, and you get the depth of it pretty fast. Yeah. So it's kind of funny knowing that I went from being very critical of Civil War when it first came out, and now I'm like, man, there's a lot of layers to it that I actually very appreciate and really, really love.
Yeah, and that's overall why I like the Captain America movies the most of the series. They tend to have the biggest... At least for me personally, I like the themes of them, the story and the character development within them. They seem to be the more significant ones.
Yeah. But yeah, and then getting to see Black Panther was really cool. I was really excited. I think the problem with Civil War was they had spoiled everything you were going to see in the trailer.
For sure. Yeah, it would have been a lot cooler to see Ant-Man show up or see Black Panther show up. And see Spider-Man show up live.
See Spider-Man show up without the knowledge that he was actually going to show up. That would have been amazing. But hindsight. But Black Panther shows up and he's a badass out of the gate. I mean, the whole chase sequence between him, Bucky, and Captain through the highway, it looks cool. It's fun to watch. It's exciting. It's action-packed. It made everyone really excited for the Black Panther movie, which was not right away after this.
Or no, Doctor Strange is after this.
Doctor Strange came out first, yeah. But it was fun because people had been wondering if Black Panther was going to show up or not. And seeing him finally show up, that was cool. That was really neat.
For sure.
And they gave him some interesting moments because he spends his whole arc is about, I'm going to kill the man that killed my father. He's straight up after revenge.
Yeah. Love a good revenge
which
story.
I think is an interesting take for a hero, for this kind of hero to me, because as you learn later on, he's supposed to be like, he has to learn it's better to take care of those than to just isolate and attack, but we'll get to that. Civil War, I didn't care for it when it first came out, but it's definitely an installment that has grown on me. I still think it's the weakest out of the Captain America movies, but I think it's only the weakest because it gets pretty tripped up in a lot of forced humor, which is a common thing. You and I have said it about almost every installment, and it continues to happen. The one-liners just become, we don't need a one-liner after every serious moment. You don't need that at all.
Yeah, you can just let something hang there for a second or end the scene with a serious moment. You don't have to immediately bring levity to the situation and sometimes almost undo the exact point you're trying to make.
Right. So
it's also the biggest of the Captain America movies with all these heroes in it and everything going on. It's more complicated than the other ones, and the other ones are so great. I mean, Winter Soldier is probably the best one
right.
of the whole series, so hard to compare.
It's true.
So,
what came after that? Because I have the chronological order, not the release.
Yeah, so Doctor Strange came out next. It was the last movie in 2016 in the MCU, which again I think solid origin story. Like Ant-Man, it's just a good origin story, especially an introduction to a character that not a lot of people probably knew about, like Ant-Man.
It is the trippiest freaking movie in the whole MCU saga. This movie is a blast to watch just from the visual point of view.
I agree that it's heavy on the visuals for sure, but I do kind of get disconnected or detached from it for that reason.
Oh, really?
I don't know if it might be the thing about CG. So it's tempting to do CG because you can make anything you can dream of in CG.
Yeah.
But the downside, I think, is, and why I think practical effects are so great, is because people's bodies, their eyes, are very good at like being able to tell what's real and what's not real. And so if you don't have enough realness or certain moments that remind you of like, oh, what's the weight of this? What's the momentum of this? All the physics things. Then it's easy to just kind of like cross your eyes and be like, I don't really know what's going on anymore.
Yeah.
And so
I get that. The CGI, you can tell Doctor Strange was like, the majority of filming it was on a green screen soundstage. Yeah. You can tell that pretty quickly. I really enjoy it though. I like the visuals because of just how like out of control they are. They reminded me of the like kaleidoscopes that we would look at as kids. I don't even know if they still make them. It's a weird movie though. It has probably my favorite boss fight of all time because it's one of the most unique boss fights. We'll get to that here in a second. But I really like Benedict Cumberbatch as a superhero, especially this superhero.
Yeah, I think he does a very good job of being the calculated physician that Doctor Strange is. Yeah,
and this was another one where I didn't have really any background on the character when I saw the movie. So it was one of the... Yeah, I knew he was able to do some magic stuff. But the movie, I ended up really enjoying the movie. I think I always feel bad. I'll say this. So I do have some critiques on Doctor Strange, even though I really enjoyed it. I feel bad for Mads Mikkelsen, right? That's his last name. I think his villain is one of the weakest, poorly handled villains in the entire MCU.
Yeah. And Mads Mikkelsen, who I've said before, I absolutely love. He has the potential to be so great and so scary and everything. Intense.
Yeah, and I remember when I found out he was playing the villain in this movie, I was like, dude, you got crazy magic shit going on. He looks possessed, but like on a magic side. He could potentially be like truly frightening as a villain. He could be terrifying. He's this like super experienced wizard who has gone the way of complete dark magic. So you're like, I mean, his opening scene, he chops a dude's heads, like hacks a guy's head off with no care. To me, I was like, oh shit, this guy's going to be like terrifying to watch. And then he just waves his hand like this for the next 2 hours and throws a couple like air dagger things. I feel bad for him because I still feel, even though I enjoy the movie and watching it this week again, every time I watch it, I'm like, this guy should have had so much more screen time. Yeah. Because I feel he could have been so terrifying to watch.
Yeah. You needed to establish his character more and really let him be that intimidating presence that makes you kind of dread when he comes on screen. You're like, oh shit, how's Doctor Strange ever gonna like defeat this guy?
Right. But he doesn't really get to do a lot, which is kind of a bummer. That's probably my biggest critique of Doctor Strange is, although I think the movie as a whole is pretty cool, it has the weakest villain in the whole, to me, in the whole MCU. And I'm like, you have one of the greatest actors playing the weakest character. What happened here? I'm very curious to see what was like cut out of the script or what the studio probably interfered with in terms of, that's going a little too out of our.
Yeah, it could have been too scary. It could have been too hard edge that they were like, you can get the same thing across in a lighter tone. I don't know.
Which will be interesting to see how they handle the Doctor Strange sequel, because they have come out. Kevin Feige came out and was like, "Oh, it's straight horror." Like, so now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
Okay, did you hear? Because I know my opinion on the villain is not uncommon. I know a lot of people feel it's a weak villain, and the story could have been a little more fleshed out. So I'm wondering if maybe the studio listened. I guess we'll find out next year.
That would be really cool if it's true. I also really like, in general, I like how magic is used in comic books. So I'm always interested in the magic powered characters because it's such a different kind of power as opposed to like, and I'm a huge DC guy, as we talked about, and so I always go to the DC side.
There's tons of magic in
but
DC.
As like powerful as someone is, like Superman is, his biggest vulnerability is just like someone being able to do magic. And so a magic user like Doctor Strange or the Ancient One or whoever is very interesting to me as something that opens up the universe. Obviously, we already had kind of Scarlet Witch very little bit so much so far, but starting to introduce that magic into the world is very interesting.
Yeah, I remember being really excited when Marvel announced, like, okay, the next phase is magic. Like, we can't conclude this without the use of magic. So you're going to have to, we got space and we got actual powers. And we got kind of cyborgy characters and like Nebula. We got a raccoon-esque thing.
Just a guy that likes guns.
And now legitimate magic that you find out has been like kind of around since the elements formed after the Big Bang, with the Infinity Stones. Magic was part of that. It was kind of like a side effect of the Big Bang, if you will. And these people have kind of learned how to harness it over all these centuries, which I think is really cool. I'm like you. I really like magical characters. And I think magic in comic books or with superheroes is way different than magic in like Harry Potter or a lot of other kind of where people hear magic, they think wands and stuff. And then you're like, no, you should see what they do. There's no wands. It's all about just like harnessing the energy of the entire universe.
And always used to have a really big, cool fight with a really big, powerful person.
Right. So Doctor Strange being the full, like, magic is officially, it's not just Scarlet Witch. It is a full, real thing in this universe. Very exciting, very cool. And I love the intricate details and all of their, like, the shields and the weapons that they manifest. I love all the designs and all the, like, because you can tell there was a lot of time spent in designing how is this shield going to look. And they're all different. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but it's never the exact same. There's like different. So
incredible detail.
They're using, different kind of spells and stuff. It just, to me, that makes it more fun. Not to get into woke culture, but when you talk Doctor Strange, you have to, you get kind of forced into this. Yeah, that's
kind of was a big controversy, I think, when it came out.
To the point where even Kevin Feige and Tilda Swinton have both been like, yeah,
oops,
probably shouldn't have done this one. I'm not one to, and I know you and I are pretty much the same when it comes to this. We don't really fall into being woke just for the sake of social media, or I'm sure I'm wording that wrong, but we're from a generation where if you didn't agree with something, you didn't agree with it and you could move on. Now we're in a time where if you don't agree with something, you're like a horrible human being.
You didn't become obsessed about this thing that really doesn't matter that much. As long as you're not really actually hurting people, then it can be an accident.
Now, Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One is kind of funny to me.
It looks weird.
Because at no point in any of the comics, and I was talking to the comic book guy, and he was kind of educating me on Doctor Strange and the Ancient One. At no point was the Ancient One ever female, let alone Caucasian.
So you'd think that the woke crowd would be cool because at least it's a female.
You would think, but unfortunately,
representation.
Whoever wrote the screenplay completely just like I don't know if they were trying to avoid falling into like being
typecast.
Oh my god, I'm losing the words. Typecast or I'm totally lost the word. Anyways, you know what I mean. They
kind of have a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because if you only cast Asian people in relatively cliche Asian roles, so she's basically a Buddhist monk kind of person, right? Then you're like, well, why are they not giving me a real kind of job or whatever?
Right. They probably would have gotten blasted for that. Yeah. So they went with Tilda Swinton. Now, I'm a Tilda Swinton fan. I think she's a fantastic actress. She's incredible. She's intense to watch. She plays the role really well.
She's very versatile.
But I do have to chuckle every time because I'm like, I bet they had conversations on set of like, this will probably be the thing.
And it's, for me, I don't immediately be like, oh, she's not Asian or, oh, she's a woman. I don't notice that. For me, she looks weird bald. Like, you don't see bald women ever. And so it's just kind of weird in that way. Not since G.I. Jane.
Like with the weird scar on the back of the head. Yeah. I definitely buy her character as being an ancient living person.
She seems very, very wise. She's been around the block. She definitely has that like presence.
Yeah. She has, she definitely, and I have no clue if this was what she was going for or anyone in the studio was going for. But to me, I get very heavy Morpheus vibes from her, like trying to be time. Morpheus being that. Yeah. Which is cool. Makes me kind of think, what would Morpheus be like if magic existed in... But that's a whole nother...
that'd be cool.
But it does crack me up because it's a conversation that still gets brought up. And I was like, I know Jake and I will probably chuckle about it, so I had to bring it up just for you and I.
I honestly forgot about that one, but it's very true.
But yeah, I enjoy Doctor Strange. I think it's a decent entry into the whole story arc. And he's kind of a vital character, considering he carries with him one of the Infinity Stones.
It is very important to introduce him for a couple of those reasons. And you had to do it at some point. I think they did it at a good time in the timeline to get him in there, and it'd be weird for him to show up at the very end with like, oh, I have this stone, and oh, I have this vision about whether we win or not, all that kind of stuff. So it's a good way to enter it, I think. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is next, which I think they took what worked well in the first one and they keep it, and that's all great. And they then expand the universe and expand the lore and everything, and I think that's cool too. So I like Guardians, both Guardians.
I am a big fan of Volume 2. I know going into sequels, you usually get a little weary. Going into an MCU sequel, you definitely get a little weary.
As a Phase 3, I think people in general were starting to get weary. But I do think that everybody felt like Guardians was an easy one to just go see. It's like, even though I may have gotten tired of it, I may have skipped Ant-Man because nobody was really talking about it. I may have not really loved Doctor Strange because it was kind of new and weird and different, but I know I'm going to like Guardians.
Right. And Volume 2 did what Volume 1 did really well, which was, if you never read the comics, if you had no interest in superheroes, you could still watch this movie and be entertained. You could still enjoy it. It's very fun. It's odd. It's got some
very weird,
very fun, odd parts. You get introduced to Celestials, which is also kind of a segue into Phase 4 for Marvel, going into the Eternals and all that. I personally was really excited for Volume 2 because I had actually read a bunch of Guardians comics, old and newer. And I remember just being so excited for Quill's dad. Because no one, unless you read the comics, you had no clue who his dad was. And for me, I was like, I don't want to tell people who Peter Quill's dad is because I don't want to ruin the movie because I've read the books. But I remember, like, when they announced, hey, we're making Volume 2, I was excited. As soon as they were like, we cast Kurt Russell in Guardians, you're not going to know who he's playing. Immediately I was like, oh my God, Kurt Russell is Chris Pratt's dad. This is awesome.
It was a big loose thread of the original movie too. So everybody was kind of hoping that we would get closure eventually of who his dad could be.
Yeah. And Guardians really, it's a joy to watch. I enjoy the first one more just because it was so new and it took me so off guard. But Volume 2, honestly, I enjoy the second one almost as much as that first one. It's so enjoyable. It's so funny. It's so action-packed. And then the little twists that they throw into it genuinely hit hard. Like, when you find out his dad is the one that killed his mom. Spoilers. I remember him saying that, and the whole theater collectively reacted like Peter Quill does, where everyone was,
I was not ready for this.
Oh, no. Especially, I think it's so heartbreaking because they build you up of, like, Peter's getting that father experience he never actually had. And you start,
and this is good, and my dad likes me, and all this stuff.
Yeah, even after I was weary. And then you start learning more details of, like, his relationship with Yondu and all the other Reavers. And you're like, oh, this is such a deeper, like, this is oh my God, what is happening to me? And then I cannot talk Volume 2 without bringing up, for such a fun, hilarious action sci-fi comic book movie, it has one of the saddest endings in the whole MCU. Like, it's a bittersweet ending, you know, with Yondu's funeral, and he's getting honored by the Reaver because you find out he's actually been trying to keep Peter safe this whole time because he took him as, like, oh no, I viewed you as my kid, and I was not going to let you get to Ego and let him do what he wanted to.
And this guy, like, you thought was a piece of shit is actually, like, really nice and
one of the best characters. And then you've got the whole story arc with Rocket trying to, like, going through a whole bunch of his own personal kind of issues. Volume 2, I think, knocked a lot of people off guard because, as funny and hilarious as it is, it has a lot of very deep, kind of dark themes to it that run throughout the whole story. I would say Volume 2 is almost like a tearjerker in some aspects, especially with Yondu, you know?
Yeah.
Which was kind of a shock to the system because we spent all of Volume 1 thinking Yondu was a piece of shit and he's like going to blow Peter Quill up. And then you find out, no, the dude's literally been just trying to be close enough to keep him safe this whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have, I mean, there's so many different layers and characters going on. So that's part of the reason this movie is so interesting. Obviously, Gamora and Nebula, as they're like, they have their sister relationship as daughters of Thanos. It's like, that is also very interesting as well.
Yeah. And it feels good seeing their animosity finally coming to a head and them just kind of having a real moment with each other of like, this was all I wanted, that's all you wanted, and you find out it was pretty much the same thing, but due to fear and tyranny they were attacking each other.
You can't see it, or you can't hear it in the audio version of the podcast, but Dustin was winking at the camera.
But seeing their relationship finally like kind of get on track, that's a really cool moment. I said it in part 1, I'll say it again. The Guardians movies they're special. They're so enjoyable for being such oddball films. Thank God for James Gunn.
Yeah.
Really.
I think it seems to do a really good job of tackling the theme of family in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
You have the family of the ship, these weird misfit characters that all kind of just come together and work well together. And then, the two sisters, and then Quill and his dad. And it's a pretty fast and deep movie. Like you said, it's serious themes.
Yeah. That you don't really catch on until right at the ending, and then you're like, "Oh my God!" And you get hit in the feels. It's like there's fireworks in space.
Yeah, and you have Baby Groot to make you not sad anymore.
And Baby Groot. Oh, okay. The opening to Volume 2 is one of the cutest, most fun movie openings ever. Of Groot dancing around, attacking the little creature thing. My favorite, it's a little quick detail. I'm sure everyone's seen it, but I love it. I get excited about it every time that I watch it. Is as they're dancing, all the characters, Groot, you gotta move, you're gonna get hurt, because they're all like suddenly very protective of Baby Groot. He's the baby of the group. And Rocket even flies by him and says, "You're gonna get hurt, buddy, you gotta get out of here." But Gamora comes over, and she's like fighting, and she's saying, "Groot, I need you to move." And he waves at her, and she goes, "Hi." It's such a cute moment. Every time I'm like, this is so. It just
kind of melts her.
What a great way
heart.
Well, and it's such a great, because Guardians Volume 1 starts off with Quill dancing as he's going to get the first stone, and then have Volume 2 kick off with Baby Groot dancing during a battle. It fits so well. It's so enjoyable. It sets the tone for just entertainment in general.
It's very fun, and it kind of, I remember watching it for the first time and being a little bit worried, because I love the first one so much. You don't know with that second one if it's going to be the same or good or worse. But after that opening, I was like, this is exactly what I hoped it would be. We should be fine.
Right. Right. Like, you feel great after that opening scene. You feel so good.
It's a good thing for sure.
Oh, it's so fun. All right, what came after Volume 2?
Spider-Man Homecoming is next.
Okay. Because, see, the chronological order is you watch Guardians 1 and 2 back-to-back before Age of Ultron.
Okay. So you're way behind then.
Ish.
But Spider-Man, we kind of talked about, it's the homecoming of this character to the Marvel universe, for one thing. It's a very
And the climax takes place at homecoming.
Well, that's mostly what it is. Yeah, it's a very big deal that you have a Spider-Man movie that has Tony Stark in it. Like you said, that's really fun. Yeah. It's also the first time we've had a hot Aunt May, so that's good too.
That's true. It's true. And this one has one of my favorite villains.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if it's because I'm so biased with Michael Keaton in general or what, but I genuinely think his villain is really the only one that got a full story. Yeah. I mean, the movie starts with him. It doesn't even start with
his story is my personal favorite kind of villain story, where you understand his perspective, and in his story, he's the hero kind of thing. They do that, I think, with Thanos. Eventually, when we get to it, he makes sense as well. But for a one-off character that doesn't have multiple movies, I think they do a really good job with Vulture.
Yeah, Michael Keaton as Vulture. He's so good. Like, and he kind of, you see him at first just kind of being part of like, well, I make this alien tech weaponry to sell on the black market. And then he quickly, without realizing he's doing it, turns into a full-fledged like, oh, I can be kind of a crime lord. Like,
he's a warlord.
Yeah. And you see him starting to really get so caught up into that greed and that desperation because he's so mad at losing his contracts and constantly trying to like keep face for his family, which, by the way, Spider-Man Homecoming has one of the best twists in a comic, like in the MCU. But I'll get to that here in a little bit. Yeah, Spider-Man was like, I was so excited to see it because it was Spider-Man is officially a part of Marvel now. This is going to be fun. He's going to be with Iron Man, which brought me back even more to, like I mentioned earlier during Civil War, that those days as a kid watching the cartoon. I was so excited. I remember being like, Iron Man's in this movie way too much. But it makes sense just with how their relationship is supposed to be going. I really like that they never bothered to even show hints of Spider-Man's backstory because we've gotten his origin so many times. I thought that was really smart, and they've done it really well where it's like, nope, we're not even going to go down that. We're not even going to give you like flashbacks.
Right. Yeah, I think it would have been certainly unnecessary if they had done it. So I think it's a good decision to just leave it out. We're past his uncle dying. We're past him growing. We're past him becoming Spider-Man. Let's just dive into where he's at now, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And it is funny watching after you get the whole Vulture set up that it goes into Peter's trip to Germany, and he's like filming the entire trip with Happy Hogan. Like, this freaking kid.
He very much gets the sense this is just a kid in high school who happens to have a good heart and some extraordinary powers, but he's still just a kid in high school.
He's just a kid in high school. And thanks to the events of the Avengers, his whole life is like completely thrown off course. He's been the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man for so long, doing like helping old ladies across the street. And all of a sudden, he really finds himself kind of up shit creek. Like, real consequences start showing up where he can be hurt. He can potentially die. I think Tom Holland does a great job of showing that kind of mental transformation throughout the movie. He does a lot, especially after the twist, where his whole body language, his facial expressions, everything just like switches, and you kind of see him being like, shit, I'm stuck in doom now. Like, what do I do in this kind of situation? What would Tony do almost? Like, poor kid.
I think it's very interesting to see him thrown into a much bigger world that have much bigger stakes and he's mostly on his own for most of it. So those are cool to see him pull himself out of that.
And I will say I side with Happy Hogan on never responding to the text messages. If anyone sent me that many messages that often, I would ignore them too.
Yeah, 100%.
So the twist, this was a fun moment in the theater. So I saw it before I took my daughter to it. And both times the theater responded the same way, which is always fun when you get like a genuine theater reaction. Yeah. And so Peter goes to pick up the girl for homecoming, and Vulture answers the door. I remember the whole theater, myself included, that first viewing just being like, no shit. Like, oh no. And then the whole like car ride. Have you ever noticed when Vulture figures it all out? When Michael Keaton's driving, they're at the red light and he figures it all out. The light turns green right as he connects all of the dots. Fun little detail for everyone. It is. Keaton does a great job during that drive scene too, as he figures it out. When he does the like good old Spider-Man. Like the way he contorts his face when he says it, very much is like that's a villain. That's a yep. He might actually shoot Peter in the face tonight.
Yeah, he's great at kind of holding that tension that the audience is feeling. That there's so much tension in this car now. It's so good, and he's so fun.
So fun. And so I took my daughter to see it. And as soon as he answered the door, my daughter, along with the rest of the people that hadn't seen the movie yet, all went, "What?" And my daughter was just like, "No way!" It's like, way. Spider-Man: Homecoming was a joy. It really is. It's so well done. We got one of the best villains. There's some hints to other villains in it. So they hinted to Scorpion.
Okay.
So I'm like, come on, bring on Scorpion. He was always a great character to watch because he's so insane. And who knows what they're going to show in the final Spider-Man film? Who knows? I don't. No one knows what's going on now, except for the people behind their desks. But,
I know that I often see that fans of Batman tend to also be fans of Spider-Man, and I think it's because both have the deepest bench or the strongest roster of villains. And I hear people say Spider-Man's villains are so good for that reason.
They're so fun to watch. They're insane. Yeah. They're absolutely out of their goddamn minds.
Which is what you want.
For the most part. There's a couple goofy ones. But Spider-Man also, like, he becomes a really big, at least in the comics, he's kind of a great part of the whole multiverse thing. He really obviously they're changing that up for the movies, but I mean, he was one of the first ones to really start learning about the multiverse and finding out it's real. And I'm hoping that's what they're doing with the final one. But again, we'll find out later.
That should be interesting. Since you brought up the controversy behind the Ancient One, there's not really controversy here, but I'm curious what you think. How do you feel about, I assume you say her name like Zendaya as MJ? How do you feel about MJ?
I'm not a big fan of MJ.
I didn't know if I was alone in that, because I am also not a big fan.
No. I get what they're doing with her character. I think they give her... I wish they would start segueing away from MJ being like this social outcast. Because MJ never was a social outcast. I kind of understand why they went with this direction for it, or for that character, to try and make it nowhere near similar to what Kirsten Dunst did in the Tobey Maguire trilogy. So I get that. because that was really the last time we had Mary Jane Watson. And even MJ and Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, her name is not Mary Jane. She just calls herself MJ. So there's still debate on if she is the MJ.
That's fair.
Or not. But no, the like weird social outcast stoner face all the time. Not for me.
That's same for me. It doesn't really work for me. I don't really like the way that her personality is portrayed, and that is probably mostly writing related, not necessarily how she plays the character. It's probably because of that background, there's some social outcast. She's written or portrayed as very kind of sarcastic and defensive and outcasty and angsty, I guess. I don't know. It just seems kind of weird, and I don't dig it.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I was glad in the sequel, Far From Home, right? That they kind of started opening her up a little bit more, but I'm still, and I try not to put too much into it because I'm like, okay, I get what they're doing, but I'm stuck in my old. No, MJ was this way. I need MJ. If you're going to have Mary Jane Watson in the film or MJ in the film, you need to have MJ, not stoner, angsty outcast version.
I think most people would be totally fine with just a totally new character. The value you get out of a name recognition of her to say, hey, my name's MJ, and everybody goes, oh, hey, that's cool. Immediately gone after that. Nobody else. It's not like a thing that needs to be maintained. So it could be a totally different character, and you would have really no change to what people think or feel about it. And they might even like it more. I agree with that.
Yeah. But I was always personally a Gwen Stacy fan.
Too. And I liked the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies for that reason, and Emma Stone for sure.
Yeah. So I'm also kind of like, maybe we'll get to meet Gwen Stacy in his final film.
That would be cool. All right, Thor Ragnarok.
Okay.
And I don't know how you feel about Thor Ragnarok. I kind of can guess now that you said, okay, in that way. But I personally don't really like it either. And I'm annoyed when people say that it's like the best in the whole series, because people will seem to love it. And maybe it's me, maybe I'm weird, and I do have kind of an indie music streak where the more people like something, the less I like it. But I don't think it's that good for people to be like, this is the best. It's exactly what everything should be.
Okay. It took several viewings of Ragnarok for it to grow on me. I am still not a fan of it. I think it's a stronger contender than the Dark World, but that's not much of a stretch.
I'm not bored. I was bored during the Dark World. I'm not bored during Ragnarok, so that's good.
My biggest issue with Ragnarok, and rant time from
Everybody,
Dustin.
Sit down, get comfortable.
Okay, so the lead into Ragnarok, which we got in Age of Ultron, was Thor was going to have to visit Hell. Like, Hell was going to become a thing. Not the fiery pits, Holy Bible Hell, but like Norse mythology Hell. A little bit different. And also Ragnarok, the events of Ragnarok and like Thor comics and stuff is devastating. Right. It's nothing like there's nothing funny.
Norse mythology, it's basically the apocalypse.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. And so I remember being excited to see Thor have to go through this, to have to witness Ragnarok, be a part of Ragnarok. and I personally was really hoping that he was going to get forced to like really face a lot of things.
Like real demons and also personal demons.
Yeah, like some more character growth. When they first announced Ragnarok, I was like, cool, that means maybe this is the one, because at this point everyone knew where the whole arc was going. We knew the battle against Thanos was coming up quick, and very quick once Ragnarok came out.
Yeah, the pace had kind of picked up. Ragnarok was the first. 2017 was the first year they had 3 Marvel movies. Ragnarok was the third one.
Yeah.
So for the next, until Endgame, they have 3 movies a year now.
Yeah. So we all knew we are rapidly approaching what could potentially be one of the most shattering superhero movies of all time. And so for me, I was like, Thor has always been treated as comedic relief, stoogey, not very... He has moments of him being super godlike or superhero-like, but they've been treating him as like a one-liner.
Yeah.
Since his introduction. So I was really hopeful that the third one was going to break that mold. And then I saw Thor Ragnarok and was like, oh, you didn't break the mold. You just decided to just make a comedy.
They doubled down.
And
they doubled down.
It really bothered me. I was watching that in the theater and I was so annoyed throughout the movie. It has some cool visuals. It's got some cool parts. It's not like I was miserable. It was entertaining. I wasn't bored, like you said. But I was annoyed because where I thought they should have taken it, they were going polar opposite. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe after Hela shows up and starts killing Asgard, something's got to change, right? And then it didn't. And it was like, what are you doing?
Probably my biggest through line for this whole thing is just how weird or mishandled Thor is. He's such a interesting, deep character with so many levels and complexity, not just in the comics, but also just in general Norse mythology, that you could do so many different things. And they seem to try to actively avoid doing that, avoid giving him character development, avoid any significant... They barely touch on the father-son relationship with Odin. They barely touch on the strained brotherly relationship with Loki. They just kind of like tap on it and then move right on it, and then do a joke and then move on. They mention it, joke about it, and then move on, and completely ignore on purpose how I take it, the drama of it, or like the severity of a lot of this stuff. I don't hate Ragnarok. I can watch it. There's a lot in it that's entertaining to me, but man, every time I watch it though, I'm constantly like, why this direction? Why? Right. And did we go this way? There never seems to be a great reason why he doesn't use his powers more. It seems to be that he just forgot that he was the god of thunder and can cast down lightning. That he needs to be reminded towards the end of each movie that you have this ability, by the way.
Right.
So it's just weirdly handled, and I don't like it. Like you, especially like you said, the jokes, too much. Too many jokes. Especially, too much. Like, I knew immediately that it was like going to be that, but when he goes down to the, like you said, hellish, fiery area, he's in that like chain talking to this demon that should be terrifying and scary.
It's the opening scene of the movie, and they're cracking
as he's
jokes,
like they're having like this
slapsticky
conversation about the significance of who this like monster is and how he's going to defeat him, and then he's like rotating away. He's like, "Okay, hold on, I'll be right back," and continues to like rotate. They do a silly slapsticky joke, and it completely kills the movie.
Same page as you. As soon as it started with the jokes, I knew immediately, like, shit, I'm not going to like this one. and it's like a 2-hour installment. And this one will probably feel like 2 hours, if not longer, to me. It's grown on me a little bit over time. It definitely, like, if you're going to binge the MCU, you cannot skip Ragnarok, which I think is a little shiesty because it's not that good of a movie. Much like The Dark World, they kind of force you to have to watch it for a couple connections. So, like, you find out where Thor and Hulk have been since
during Civil War.
That was the biggest, that was the biggest question people had about Civil War, and so they delivered. I'll give them credit. You answered the question. Where
I do think it's a good idea to include Hulk. I did like, and I know people were wanting a Ruffalo Hulk standalone movie, so it kind of fills that desire. I do like seeing more Hulk, but
kind of, well, and it definitely opened up the Hulk lore. So Planet Hulk started getting talked about, you know, in the arena, you see Hulk's face there, but there's also a couple of other Hulk style.
Champions,
so it opened up more of the Marvel lore and universe, which that's exciting. It also really set up where Thor was going to end up, which I am going to, just a quick spoiler before we still have a few movies to go, but I am going to defend the Thor decision in Endgame. I have a pretty good argument, I feel, for it, which is weird considering all the...
Since you've hated all the rest of the Thor stuff.
Yes, but I do have a pretty big defense for Thor in Endgame. But that's for later. I feel bad for the character. Like you said, his character has always been based on heavy themes, darker themes, pretty devastating things. And if you haven't noticed by Ragnarok that Thor seems to forget he's got these godlike powers unless he is with the Avengers, it's kind of like, why do we wait to use the huge, like, lightning throwdown until the very end? Why aren't you just immediately being like, you know what I can do, right?
Nothing changes other than he was reminded, which is very annoying. I do like the comedy. I do like the comedy of the other gladiators, his rock friend that gets added. That's not bad. I would say leave comedy to the more of the second level characters,
obscure second. You know, it also introduces us to Valkyrie, who becomes pretty important. So she was neat to see. Cool. Again, the handling of the character is just weird to me, but I don't hate the character. I also think Ragnarok, that was a movie where they were kind of preparing everyone for the official meshing of space and Earth kind of stuff. And I think it just felt weird in Ragnarok because we were on this weird planet where it's so like futuristic-y. It's hard to explain, but I don't know. Ragnarok is such an odd movie to me, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. I know people, like you said earlier, praise it and say it's like the best MCU or the best Thor, and I'm like, it's not. I mean, and it's really I like
the style and colors and music, but you are kind of doing Guardians of the Galaxy similar things. And maybe that's why. Maybe Guardians was so popular. They're like, more of this. Thor has sucked. Let's make Thor that. I don't know what the reason was, but I like the colors and the music and the kind of outrun style. But just better writing, please, is all I would have asked for.
Yeah, the forced comedy was just too much for me. I'm like, for such heavy events that this character is supposed to be going through during this chapter.
His dad just died.
His dad died. Asgard gets completely obliterated. His home is reduced to nothing, and they're stuck on a ship. Like, it's basically an ark that they are stuck on. And they resort to, his sister wants to kill him and kill everybody. She destroys the hammer, which actually that scene looks cool.
I give that scene credit.
That looks cool.
It raises weird questions about her power levels and how she's so powerful at the beginning but so not powerful at the end, or at the very end when they're fighting on the bridge and Thor and Valkyrie and Hulk are like fighting her, and they're like, okay, we can't defeat you, but this monster that Hulk beat at the beginning of the movie in 5 seconds can defeat you, or that Thor at the very beginning defeated. I'm like, well, how? Why? I don't understand. I do. I like, just as a Norse mythology nerd, I do like seeing like Fenrir, the giant wolf, come to life. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's a big part of Ragnarok.
There is one character that probably bothered me more than everybody else in the movie, and it sucks that he did. But Carl Urban's character is annoying at best.
Very weird. I do like, I know we complained last time about Idris Elba not having much to do in the other Thor movies.
Yeah.
He is kind of badass in this one. He gets to take out a couple of zombie minions.
Yeah, and he's like the one that's still trying to keep the Asgardians safe, even though he can't be at the bridge now. I like him being kind of the this like guardian,
and it's smart. It's
for the people on a personal level. It's smart
because he can kind of see all kinds of different things, and so he can keep everybody moving so that they kind of stay one step ahead. But time's running out. It's an interesting thing. I like that for sure. Carl Urban was weird. I did like Jeff Goldblum's character, though. He's always interesting and fun.
Well, his character fit that planet that they were on. The planet was so weird. He makes a good,
like,
and
megalomaniac kind of guy.
Yeah. And his character seemed to be the personification of this planet, of just weird, ridiculous. You have no clue what the fuck you're actually around or doing. It's just but yeah, Goldblum he's entertaining in it. Kate Blanchett as Hela. The fact they got Kate Blanchett to play a Marvel villain, that's pretty
very
cool.
Serious actor.
Again, her character isn't super fleshed out. It's they make you kind of think that they're fleshing the character out, but she's mad at Dad, who's already dead. So she's mad at Thor, or mad at her brother, and she's going to take her brother's throne. That sounds like a familiar story, doesn't it?
I would say so. All right. I think we beat Thor Ragnarok to death enough.
I think we can move on from Ragnarok.
So Black Panther is next. And I think, like Ant-Man, like Doctor Strange, it's a solid, passable origin movie. Here's the thing about Black Panther, and it
sucks.
I was going to set it up as in, like, please don't cancel us. I know people seem to love Black Panther, but it's not as good as reviews and critics and bloggers would have you believe. And that's the most annoying part to me, is that it was inflated, I think, as to what its actual quality is. Most of its reviews and popularity seem to be based on politics and bloggers and things, and not really the content or quality of the movie.
Yes. By the way, as this is good timing as we're getting into talking about Black Panther, the Movie Boners post that you put up today about like Marvel comes to an end, it's saying like it could be the episode that gets us canceled. Be gentle. One of our listeners, one of my good friends, his comment is say what you need to say, man, about Black Panther. We're with you. So, yeah, was so excited for Black Panther. I was so stoked for Black Panther. I think that's the key. When it was
that's the key to not getting canceled, is that you like Black Panther.
I like that character. I was very excited to see Wakanda get fleshed out. I was so excited to see just this whole other culture. I was so stoked. And then I saw Black Panther and was like, this movie sucks. I don't like this movie. I don't know if it was completely because of the marketing. The marketing ended up, as I watched the movie, I was like, I've seen the whole movie. I watched the trailer. Like, you knew everything in the movie because you saw the trailer. And that was a letdown for me. Because then none of the spectacle was really spectacle anymore. Yeah. It was just, okay. I thought, okay, this is where it gets weird, because I completely understand, like, all the technology that comes from the vibranium and all that, and using that cool. I think it felt weird seeing them try to incorporate very ancient cultural rituals and aspects of life mixed, not even like a part of, but like mixed with this high-tech futuristic city. It felt not great.
That's a good point. They don't really merge them. It's not like you have these cultural things that are highly technologically advanced. You have extreme technology over here, ancient culture over here. They meet but don't merge, so they're just like separate still.
Yeah, and I was bummed about that, because I was excited to see the incorporation of, like, the rituals, the old culture kind of way of life with this character, because that was always an important part of the character is, you know, the legacy and all that. It just felt so weird to me. I did not like, but, and it's honestly, this and The Dark World are really the only two, when I watch the whole MCU, that I'm like, yeah, they just don't grow on me. I just cannot get into them. And it sucks, because I think Chadwick Boseman, amazing as Black Panther. It's a shame he's not around anymore to continue the character, but great casting choice for him. I thought he did the character a lot of justice. I think it was just everything else around him that was so not well handled, which brings me to people say he's like their favorite villain. I think he's one of the worst villains.
Yeah.
Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. He's not intimidating. He's fucking annoying.
He's like a pouty kind of, I should be the leader kind of
guy. My biggest gripe with how his character was handled, he's a stereotype. 100% full-fledged stereotype, and I was really disappointed to see that, and really disappointed to see people embrace that, because I was like, I thought we were trying to grow from stereotypes, trying to break stereotypes. Why are you raising one of the biggest stereotype characters I've ever seen? It was really disappointing to me, because I think that character could have been frightening. He could have been way more foreboding, but instead, we got this whiny, look at my muscles. God, Black Panther bothers me so much.
I kind of wanted to like him, or want to. You don't generally like villains. I wanted to like being scared of him, I guess is a better way to put it, because it does set it up as a very kind of not even tribal, just like in the animal kingdom, you know, how you have like, the strongest one will become the ruler or the leader of the pride of lions or whatever. This seems to be, in a similar vein, and they set up, I would really like to see Black Panther as like a younger, softer, weaker Simba type, like character and then put up against this massive, brutal, cutthroat, like the one who you would objectively choose as an alpha male, but doesn't have these other more subtle qualities that a leader would need, kind of thing. I think that it could have been very interesting and deep, but it didn't come across, I don't think.
Yeah, I really just, there is one thing that I really enjoy. Well, besides like Chadwick Boseman himself as T'Challa, but I thought a shining light in Black Panther is actually his sister, who does like the James Bondy Q kind of character.
She's a gadget for everything.
She's a blast to watch. Yeah, her character I really enjoyed. I think seeing them together was really cool because they felt like brother and sister. I think that would have been a cool relationship to see a little more fleshed out, especially since their father had just been blown up in Civil War, to see them kind of coping with that as siblings. Because they don't even mention their dad.
Yeah. You would think that she would, at least for the first time.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think people latched onto Black Panther out of fear for the political climate. And that's not what you're supposed to like a movie for. You and I have talked about this before, especially with like female-led films, where the studios kind of lose sight of letting the story be what it needs to be, and you're only making a film to be like part of the woke culture, be like, look at us, see, we're politically correct. And that's, to me, as a movie fan, as a person, wrong way to go about it. And I think that's kind of what they did with Black Panther. When it got nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, that's when you knew it was all over. It was just a joke.
It was so like, okay. This is... So don't at us.
You can. I'll defend it. I don't care. It's tough, especially because it was extra transparent to me, because you would see people make statements and talk about how this is such an important movie because it's the first Black hero or the first Black lead character. And it's kind of like Falcon had never been around. It's kind of like you've never seen Blade. It's kind of like you've never seen all of these movies that have existed for a long time. Characters have existed in the universe. Just to put a label on something is not a good enough reason to make a movie, kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah. And that was the big disappointing part for me, because the movie itself, it's not a good movie. It's just, I don't enjoy that movie at all.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's the highest rated on Rotten Tomatoes as far as the critic score goes. The critic score, I have noticed, gets further and further from reality as time goes on for this reason. If you look at the audience score for movies, that tends to be a closer. It may not be my personal favorite, but at least we're in the realm of reality over here in the audience score. And it is, I guess, kind of more towards the middle.
All right. Yeah, I'll keep watching it because you kind of have to watch it, considering Infinity War, a big battle takes place in Wakanda. But yeah, I just... So that I won't go on too much more of a rant about Black Panther. I just feel it got more credit than it actually deserved for the wrong reasons.
Right. I do agree. And I mean, I like a lot of bad movies for very personal reasons. And so if a movie, if you personally like something, I'm not going to say you shouldn't like it, but objectively, at least I'm aware my movies I like aren't good. And so this movie is also not good. But like you said, this leads right up to Infinity War. And Infinity War, is where things get crazy.
Yeah. There have only been a few movies that have come out where I feel such a weird sense of like excitement and nervousness to watch, mainly because it's like we're getting to the big payoff. I don't know where they're going to go with this. I don't know what I'm about to see. You have all the theories, you have everything, and you're finally sitting in that seat watching it. Infinity War blows my mind every time I watch it. I love Infinity War and I love Endgame. Blows my mind every time I watch it because it was immediately obvious that Marvel and Disney had finally decided to grow a pair. Not just grow a pair, but like our formula that you have all been watching, this cookie cutter formula, we're very aware of it, and we just threw it out the window. Sitting down for Infinity War, and it's starting with the destruction of the Asgard arc, was like, to this day, my daughter just watched it with me a few days ago, and she was just like, she had skipped Infinity War. She had seen Endgame, but skipped Infinity War because she was like, I cannot see the snap, Dad. She knew what was happening, but she was like, I can't watch this.
For good reason.
Well, she finally sat down to watch it with me, and watching Thanos, his introduction is one of the best introductions for a villain, because you immediately are like, he is genuinely intimidating. He feels no remorse for what he's doing. And he believes what he's doing is for the greater good.
Right.
Like, he's all about destiny. He's all about, like, this has to happen. You cannot stand in the way of destiny, which is a big thing for him, is his destiny. The fact that they kicked the whole movie off by, killing, oh my God, I just lost his name. Heimdall. Hulk loses a fist fight to the point where he hides the entire rest of the movie. But the bigger, like, shock was he kills Loki in such a savage way. Now, the theories if Loki actually died there, he dies, guys. Yes, he has a show, but you have to watch Endgame to know why he has a show. Which I haven't watched yet, by the way. Infinity War they did keep one-liners, and there's some scenes where the one-liners seem to, we don't need that right there. But Infinity War packs
they at least
punch,
they at least hold on the sad moment and carry it through. They are not afraid to say, this is sad and significant and big, and it's going to change all the characters for good, and it is what it is. Like, I really like movies with those kind of big choices, big consequences, where you watch them and you leave thinking, I can't believe they went there, or where can they possibly go from here? And I think Infinity War is one of the biggest movies that does that.
It's crazy how much happens in that movie, but more so how quick you get to all those places. So the battle, there's two big battles, there's one on Titan and there's one in Wakanda. And they end up going to Titan like 20 minutes into the movie, like they get to Wakanda halfway through the film and are immediately like, we have to fight. Like, shit's about to hit the fan really bad. We have to do what we have to do. Infinity War, man, that movie packs such a wallop.
You mentioned how quickly they moved to places. I do remember thinking, wow, he's collecting these stones pretty fast. But then I remember thinking, except they introduced him about 15 movies ago.
Right. So he's been on this quest for quite a while. He knows
where they are because he's been searching for a long time.
And they don't even bother showing you get the Power Stone, the purple one. You find out, you have to understand, like, he just destroyed Nova Corps. He just destroyed, you see him destroy Nowhere to get the ether as well. But it's, Infinity War, just like, you understand pretty quick that there's going to be, or that you're going to have to watch someone die. And you're probably going to see a few people die. I think that was a huge kind of shock to the audience system of being told pretty early on, here's the consequences of what we are now in. Gamora tells Quill straight up, like, you can't let Thanos get me. I know where the stone is. You cannot, if he gets a hold of me, you have to kill me. Like, you straight up, you have to kill me. And you understand the gravity of that. When Spider-Man stays on the ship as it's going to space, and Tony has to tell him, like, kid, this is probably a one-way ticket. Like, this is not for you. Why did you stay? You understand right there, like, oh God, someone's going to die. Yeah. I think the gravity of everything, with Vision gets stabbed and he starts graying. I don't know if you've noticed this, but from the moment he gets stabbed, he's slowly dying the rest of the movie, which is kind of hard to watch because when you get introduced to Vision and Ultron, he's like, dude, this dude is all powerful. He's like, who could fight this guy? And then you find out, like, he's also dying.
Vibrantly colorful.
Yeah. And I think Infinity War was such a great, they timed it so well, and it's why I end up, like, forgiving all of the others that I don't care for so much, because your payoff was so, like, you kind of understand why they did all that, because they knew, like, when we bring Thanos on, I mean, it's like a boxing match where you get that phantom punch all of a sudden that you never saw coming, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. And when you go through such a massive tragedy, even those people that you just met or you don't know that well, you were at least comforted by them. You're like, oh, I didn't like you before, but at least you're not this guy, so we're friends now. I'm glad. Right. I'm glad you're on screen because that means Thanos isn't on screen. We're friends.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about Infinity War. I mean, we could dissect the whole thing. It's almost a 3-hour movie, massive. Which almost says, to really dive into it, it deserves its own episode, which would mean Endgame deserves its own episode as well. So we'll try and keep it compact. Now, Infinity War, man, that was one of the most intense theater going experiences
for sure.
I've been a part of. So we can get to the rest of the movie. I'm going to talk about the snap. And then we can dive into, like, the emotions leading up to it, if you will. I just remember that first night watching it. So I went with some fellow friends of mine from work, huge nerds. We had watched the majority of the MCU movies together. And because, like, one of my best buddies and we would watch the movies and then, like, take our kids to see the movies. We had to deem intensity level or scary image level, and so we sat down for Infinity War, and I have to laugh at myself because I'm such a dick. I went into Infinity War being like, Iron Man better fucking die in this movie. I'm so tired of seeing him in every movie. They need to kill him. And I was like, I put on a big head on my shoulders, right? Like, whatever. When they are fighting Thanos on Titan, I remembered that whole fight being like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle watching any of these guys die, but I know someone else has to die. Gamora's death? Brutal. I mean, watching that is so, like, oh my God, he just throws
him. And like, it's sold so well because it's so personal to him, but his mission is above all that anyway. And he tells it so well.
And you've grown to love Gamora, you know, and you really buy into her and Peter should be together. They love each other. You really buy into all that, and to see it like literally thrown off a cliff and just discarded for someone else's purpose, you're like, I can't handle that. So Gamora's death had already kind of like hit me a little harder than I think I expected it to. But then the Titan fight and the fight in Wakanda, I'm watching all of this, and I remember sitting in the chair just being like, oh God, like, I don't know. I might end up tearing up during this movie. Like, I think this movie's full on affecting me. And, you know, you see Thor putting himself in the line of the star so that they can forge Stormbreaker, and he understands, like, I might die. I might not even be able to get Stormbreaker, but I have to create this weapon so that we can defeat Thanos. Poor Thor. You know, that it was so good seeing these characters like getting beat up, honestly, like not just on a physical level, but like emotionally and mentally, they were all having to be the hero kind of aspect of like, eventually you have to be faced with the ultimate decision, you know, the ultimate sacrifice. Do you do that?
Which these heroes had not really been tested in that way before. And I think every hero needs to be. That's their essence as a hero. Well, I sacrifice myself to save this innocent person or the world.
Yeah. Right. Which Captain America and Iron Man, they were the two in previous installments that had been like, if I go, I go. This is just how it is. But yeah, all the other ones, you never really get the sense that they ever made that connection, that eventually that choice is going to be there. So to see them being forced to make these decisions, breath of fresh air, even if it was a sad one. But anyway, so the fight on Titan. I know everyone blames Peter Quill for waking Thanos back up. Yes, he wakes him up because I don't think anyone's going to sleep taking the butt of a gun to the face several times. But if you watch that scene closely, it's kind of Spider-Man's fault, because Spider-Man starts screaming, I got it, I got it, I got it. And he pulls the gauntlet off, and that's what actually gets Thanos to like click back to reality. So don't blame Star-Lord.
That's how I kind of took it, is that he's celebrating before it's fully done. Yeah. But I remember being in that theater, and I saw it several times in the theater because I just kept soaking it up. I was so blown away with what they were doing. And it was a great theater experience because the visuals are so big and massive, but just seeing it around people and experiencing it together is just so scary, crazy. It's one of I love it when you go to a movie where the tension in the theater is so thick for the entire film. And I've only experienced that with a few movies, and this was one of them. Man, when the snap happens, dude, they cut the music. The only sound you really get, it's like this very subtle, quiet, like wind, air, wind kind of feel to it. Yeah. And that's the only that's the only music until the credits roll. And nobody, you didn't know what would happen. You knew that was bad. You didn't want it to happen, but then it does, and you're like, did nothing happen? What's happening? And then the dust starts showing up. And I just remember, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps. I've seen the movie so many fucking times, and I still get chills from it just because the Russo brothers did this so well, where
the sinking of all the dust, everyone vanishing was so well done, and the gravity of it and the drama of it was so heavy, and just like, is this really where we're leaving off? Like, am I actually seeing this happen right now? And then Spider-Man goes, and you're like, fuck Marvel. You know?
Yeah, when he says,
like,
when he tells Tony that he doesn't feel very good, it's like, it gives me goosebumps every time.
Right. It's just, and then you get to like, then it goes back to Wakanda, and you see Steve sitting with Vision's actual body, which is the confirmation that Vision is definitely dead. And you got, you know, the survivors running up and being like, where'd he go? What's going on? And Steve is just defeated. I think that's such a powerful image, is seeing Captain America so defeated that he can't even stand up now. He's sitting.
He's the most resilient character.
The final, and the final line of the whole movie is "Oh God," and it's like the whole theater, when those credits roll, the whole theater, you can just feel everyone just being like, distraught, and just, you don't know what you're supposed to do at that point, or where you go from there.
Yeah.
To me, rewatching it, every scene now, you know, after you know everything that happens, every scene that leads up to it, the whole movie, I spend just like, oh my God, I'm building that whole sequence up again. And it affects me the same way every time I watch it. And I'm like, rarely does a movie have the capability of repeating that same feeling, that same experience. My respect for Infinity War is so high.
I definitely agree. I think it's a really good idea to let every character have their moment too, where you're watching it and as an audience member, I don't know what's going to happen. And then they start dissolving. You're like, no, not them too. And then it moves on.
Right.
And it gives them their time. You get to grieve them for a minute. And then it moves on to the next one. You're like, are you? No, not you. No, you, no. So,
right. And then you see Groot turn to dust, and you're like, are you fucking kidding me, Groot?
Yeah. It's very unfair. And I think that's it's great that they added stakes, like real life stakes.
Yep.
Was really what was missing. And it works here. I mean, it's not, you can argue if this should have had stronger stakes or not earlier, but maybe part of the reason it works is because it's real for the first time now. That's possible too. I don't know.
I kind of liked the timing. I know at the time, as all these movies were rolling out, I was one of them that was like, bring us Thanos. Like, let's get to Thanos already. But now when I binge watch the MCU, I'm like, no, I love the timing of this, because the team has been through so much already. They've seen so much already. They're no longer a team in Infinity War. Like, there is no Avengers in the movie. They just all, I guess, fight. You know? I think I like the timing that Thanos shows up when the team is kind of at its weakest. I think it's calculated. I think it gives Thanos even more gravity, because he's taken advantage of this Avengers team, which he has heard about since the first Avenger, 2012. They're split. They're not a unit anymore. So he knows if they're not a unit, the fight is
very smart
easier
to catch them on their heels like that.
Now, Infinity War, as much as I love the movie, there are a couple little nitpicky things that I have about it. One, they still kept a lot of the one-liners in that just didn't feel warranted or like necessary, like most one-liners. But there's one piece of CGI that just, it bothers me, because the CGI is so good during the whole thing. It's so realistic. It's so well done. And the bad piece of CGI happens to be during the most heartbreaking, intense sequence, which is the very last scene. Or not the very, very last scene, but during the final line. So you have the survivors running up, asking where Thanos went, what's going on. Steve is deflated on the ground. And then you see Bruce Banner in the Hulkbuster suit.
It looks so bad.
It looks so bad. It is the worst piece of CGI. And I know you guys didn't run out of budget. Because at this point, you imagine Disney was just like,
whatever
you need more money? Yeah, just make it. You almost get the sense that they were hoping everyone's focus would be on Steve, because he's front and center with the only line, with the final line. And, Bruce is in the background, but
he's like lit in a bright way that your eyes kind of go directly to him.
Right. Just naturally look up, and his head, it looks so bad. It looks so bad. It's so bothersome to me. Like, now when I watch it, I have to consciously just
don't look.
Bruce isn't there. Like, I'll look at everyone in front of him, but Bruce is not there, because it's distracting how bad that CGI
ruins
actually
the mood
is.
that you're in.
It does, and it sucks that it had to be bad at that point in the film. But, I mean, those are really my only big critiques of it. The rest of the movie is so well done. I remember... So every now and again, we get a film where the theater is so invested in what they're watching that they cheer. And Infinity War was one of those movies where they cheered. And it was when Captain America showed back up. And it's funny because if you binge the whole thing, it doesn't feel like much time has gone between Civil War to Infinity War. You jump pretty into it.
Yeah. In real world time, it's 2 years.
It was a while.
2.5 years. I guess 2 years.
So we get Cap's return, and I remember the theater, you hear the music, the Avengers little string playing, and the whole theater just started clapping and cheering because Cap was back, and he kicks some serious alien ass in that scene. And then Black Widow shows back up, and people were like, oh my god, everyone actually is showing back up. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Fun moments. Normally, I will be annoyed by a theater clapping at parts that aren't necessary or cheering during parts that, but the MCU, the Avenger films, especially Endgame and Infinity War, they genuinely deserve that kind of reaction.
Well, it was such a big event.
They really
it was a significant event, potentially once in a lifetime event, and it was a big deal,
right? Yeah.
So,
anything you want to add? I went on for a while.
Yeah,
I just get passionate.
I think you covered it.
Sorry.
It is great. It's probably it's maybe the best movie experience that I ever have had that I can think of. It was a big on that level. It's not comparable to anything else on that level, really. It's just so long coming, and to have it happen, and to have it happen in a good way, to be good, to be better than your expectations. That's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, it was so good.
It's still so good. Yeah. Ant-Man and the Wasp, though, comes out right after, which is kind of a reset of, we're in a very heavy place right now as a world, and just a couple months later, actually, came out July 2018. And Infinity War was April. So
I remember I enjoyed Ant-Man and Wasp. It was fun. I think the timing of it was well done because the devastating heaviness of Infinity War was still kind of sagging on everyone. So Marvel was like, okay, you're going to get the happy installment real quick. And I like that they didn't change their formula from the first Ant-Man. It still felt very like, oh, this is just, it's a family movie again. It's fun. It's silly. We got a giant Pez flying down San Francisco now. That's awesome. The villain became a little more in depth, which a lot of people first viewing, even I didn't think she was very like that deep of a villain, but the more I watch it, the more I'm like, no, she's simply just trying to survive. Like she's got some heavy baggage. I like Ghost. I think she could have been around a little more than like the weapons guy that is following him around trying to find the lab.
Yeah,
the black market.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. I thought that she was very weak and dull the first time I saw it, but I think that she's grown on me, and it could have been interesting to see her become a hero or something.
Right, or to see maybe she'll pop back up in a later installment. Who knows? But Ant-Man, it was funny because going into Ant-Man and Wasp after Infinity War, everyone had the same question. When does this movie take place?
When are we right now?
And you find out like, oh, so Scott has also been like under house arrest. So he's been staying inside for 2 years, hasn't seen the outside world, and he's about to go on like be free finally. It's a cute movie. It's a fun movie. I don't have too much bad to say about it. It felt good. It was a nice like kind of palate cleanser almost after Infinity War. Yeah. Like in a good way. Because Infinity War really just stuck with audiences worldwide. So to have kind of the palate cleanser was kind of nice, kind of okay.
Yeah. It was all characters that we like. Well, I really like Ant-Man, obviously like Evangeline Lilly and Michael Douglas and everybody, Michael Pena, they're all really fun. So it was really, really nice. I liked tying it back into the world at the very end where where he goes in the quantum zone, and then you're like, oh shit, I forgot that everybody was dissolving in the world.
Right. Okay, so like everybody watching the movie, I was like, are they even going to tie this in? Like, are they going to tell us when this is actually happening? And then the last scene happened, and they turned to dust. And I remember seeing it and just being like, oh, shit. Oh, my God. This was such a happy film. It was such a feel-good film. What the fuck? And they just ripped that rug out from under you. Just like, no apologies. Well, I took my daughter to see Ant-Man and the Wasp in the theater. Now, remember, she didn't see Infinity War in the theater, but she knew the snap happened. She knew the characters that turned to dust. And so she knew 50% of all living creatures ceased to exist. We're watching Ant-Man and Wasp, and the post-credit scene comes up. As soon as my daughter saw the dust in the theater, I hate this movie!
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, but it's such a funny movie, right? She goes, up until the end.
Completely undone, totally ruined now.
It's just, but I respect that from Marvel because it was such a heavy reminder, because you kind of like, you get caught up in the silliness of Ant-Man's adventures, and you're like, oh, this is fun. He's free. He's trying to outrun Randall Park, who's the weirdest FBI agent in the world. And then they're like, oh, by the way, the snap still happened. Like, fuck you, Marvel.
And now he's stuck in the quantum zone.
And then he's stuck in the quantum zone, which ended up blowing up all sorts of theories, some of which actually ended up coming true. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, Ant-Man and Wasp, it's a better sequel than most. It's not the best sequel. I don't think it's as good as the first Ant-Man. It's still very enjoyable, but I really don't like the black market guy. He gets kind of annoying. although I think Ghost is a better villain than I initially thought, I do still wish she would have been more central to the movie, especially after they introduce her motivation behind everything. I think had they really focused on that and shown her kind of struggling through the day, I think it would have been really interesting to make the audience kind of fight. Do we side with her or not? I think
she could have been like a Vulture level villain where you totally understand her motivation, understand why she's doing this, and she's right in some ways for doing it that way. And
so I wish they would have done that stuff, but I don't hold those against it too much because I can put that movie on and I still laugh. I'm still smiling the whole time. It's still so enjoyable that I'm like, I won't hold too much against it, although it does have plenty of flaws. But it's a fun one. It was a nice palate cleanser.
So, Captain Marvel, which I saw for the first time.
Okay, that's right. You did not see it in the theater.
I haven't seen it. I had skipped it because everybody's like, it doesn't really matter. And
because it doesn't.
So I believed it and I didn't bother with it. But I saw it for the first time and agree that it didn't really matter.
Captain Marvel. All right, well, you just saw it, so you have fresh first-time perspective.
It's kind of the opposite of where Ant-Man and the Wasp is very important for Endgame to make sense. It introduces the quantum zone and all that stuff. Captain Marvel is not really important at all. In fact, I think that it might weirdly make things worse or weird for earlier on. It's mostly
with how they handle the Tesseract.
It's mostly a member berries movie where it's you know what it's like? It's like when you're watching a long-running TV show and the last this episode right before the finale is recapping all these like walk down memory lane things that happened throughout the series. And so it's like, hey, which some of it's fun. I am invested in the series. Some of it's fun. I like seeing young Fury. I like seeing Agent Coulson again. That's been a while. Having them be like, oh, the Tesseract is the core thing. That feels very member berries-y. It's like, okay, yeah, I do remember the Tesseract. My main beef with it, really, is that I did not for a second think that Jude Law's character was not a villain. And so when the movie seems to kind of rely on that twist, but when they rely on the twist and don't sell it to me first, I feel like you should just write a better straightforward story instead of a bad twist. And so that kind of annoys me. I think it will annoy me more if I watch it more. That, yeah, obviously we all saw that coming.
Yep. I view Captain Marvel as pretty pointless. I will only watch it when I binge the MCU because it's in the MCU, so
yeah,
it's there. You're introduced to Nick Fury and Coulson, so I guess there's that.
It seems to rely pretty heavily on
it does.
When will Fury lose his eye, which is kind of annoying too. That's not like a big deal.
Yeah, they do that joke several times in the movie, and then it turns out to be a cat. Well, not a cat. I forget the
like a Flurkin
creature
or
name.
Something.
Yeah. No, my beef with the movie is not so like nice as yours.
It sucks, is what you're gonna say. But like you did with Black Panther.
No. So kind of in the same principle.
I know where you're going
with Black Panther. Yes. So Marvel's biggest missed opportunity through at this point 20 films was where is the strong female led story? Where is a Black Widow film? Why aren't we getting these movies? Wonder Woman had already come out. And so the thought was, how is Marvel not trying to oh crap, we weren't the first to give a strong female movie celebrating women and their strength. So then Captain Marvel's coming out, and it was very much, they blatantly came out and said, this is our strong female movie. This is for the women. This is for young girls. We are like, this is for them. And I was excited for that because I have a daughter. So when these characters come out, I'm very much like, they're important. We need to embrace this because I want my child to be strong and independent. And then I saw Captain Marvel. And I was like, this feels like a 90s buddy cop film, but not done as well as the 90s buddy cop films. And at no point do I feel like this character will be inspirational to my child, to my daughter. I don't feel Carol Danvers right now is inspiring anything. I don't know if it was the director or the script. I don't know if it was Brie Larson's way of playing the character, but she comes across a lot cocky for no reason, or cocky just to be cocky. And that, to me, that's not inspiring. To me, I'm like, she literally, most of her scenes, she's looking down at people. And I'm like, I don't know if this was done on purpose or if this was like the camera angle or whatnot, but she rarely will look someone like directly. She's always kind of, her head's tilted down at them. There's always standoff body language to it. And I'm very like, none of this strikes me as a celebration of women or a celebration of their strength or inspiring women.
Yeah.
I mean, art is subjective. So if you felt that it inspired women, cool. I just did not get that.
I totally get that. There are several points where this story seems to be telling the audience that, oh, she's being held back by these like male dominated fields, like being a pilot and stuff. She's not allowed to be because she's a girl. She's not allowed to race her car and stuff. But I kind of expected more of that, to be honest. There wasn't as much as I thought it would be. But all of those times, she's not. I expected it to be more empowering, to be like, she's good at these things, and these people are not letting her do it because she's a girl. But she was not good at those things, and they were kind of right to not let her do it, which I kind of later towards the end get, because the overall theme, which I do like, is she's not exceptionally skilled at these things, but she doesn't give up, which I do like. I think that...
Right, which I do like the whole montage of, like, you get back up.
That's a good
like that
for
montage.
Sure.
But we've seen that montage several times before, so it didn't feel fresh. It didn't feel... I felt personally it felt flat, and I kind of got my confirmation when my daughter watched it, and her response to the movie was, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it wasn't just me. My daughter, even my child, she was like, yeah, the character's cool. It's got some cool parts, but the movie itself, not that great. Like, she's got some Captain Marvel posters in her room, but that was just because it was like, she went on, I just want all girl superheroes.
That's
hey, that's cool. But I felt the studio really missed the mark in terms of inspiring women with a strong female
I think that's
character.
pretty generally accepted. I don't think it was a very popular movie. Even, it's weird because it has like the biggest gap in ratings between critic reviews and audience reviews. It's like legit.
Really?
Rotten with a 45% as far as audiences are concerned. And I know that was a point of contention. I seem to remember a lot of people being like, no, like trolls are like rating it and stuff. And like, they're like anti-women people who are like trying to dog on this movie. But I was like reading a bunch of them, and they all seem pretty genuine. Like, I didn't connect to the character. It didn't have any development. Like, there are significant real concerns or critiques of it, and even the critics like rating was only 79%, which is on the very low end, like right next to Iron Man 3 and Thor and like Dark World and all that stuff. So it's generally not that loved. It's kind of just a weird thing.
Yeah, and on a not so like important social level. It was so pointless to the MCU.
It really didn't do anything. And like you said last time, when you watched it in chronological order, the after credit scene doesn't make any sense until. So it's kind of weird to put it out at this time. It would have made sense way earlier to be like, oh, this is happening around these things that you saw maybe a couple years ago, not 10 years ago.
Well, and the thoughts were also like, oh man, we're going to get like this massive fight between Captain Marvel and Thanos. Yeah. It's going to be epic. It's going to be huge. It's going to be grand. And then it was like 4 punches and they moved on from the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was Captain Marvel really falls.
My other problem with Captain Marvel in general, the character, which translates to the movie, it might be a bit of jealousy, but like quite a few things that Marvel Universe does, it's a blatant copy of characters Detective Comics did, like years before them, decades before them.
Like you mean how Shazam was originally named Captain Marvel?
There's that. It's also how this is literally a ripoff of Green Lantern and how they're both space cops, and Hal Jordan was also a test pilot, and how her whole thing is like, oh, I have the determination to just get up again. Hal Jordan's Green Lantern's whole thing is he has a strong will. So I don't know what you're trying to do. And Hal Jordan was like, Green Lanterns were invented like 30 years before Captain Marvel, and so that's the whole thing.
But that's a funny thing between the Marvel and DC properties is both would just like, oh crap, they have a new character. We're going to make one similar. We're going to do it. There's all sorts of comparisons on both sides. So it's kind of funny, but I can't help but kind of chuckle every time because I'm like, you had to steal your character's name from DC and they let you buy the property of the name because they were changing it anyways.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's I mean, like all of their movies, it's passable and entertaining enough, but again, not huge. And is it okay? So you would know. I couldn't recall at the very end when there's those like blue guys with the hoods. Aren't those from like the first Marvel movie? They're not the first Marvel movie. The first Avengers movie.
They were from. So they're called the Watchers, right? Yeah, I think that's what they were called. They first appeared with Stan Lee in the second Guardians of the Galaxy. Right? No, I'm thinking the guys with the big blue heads.
No, not the big blue heads. The guys that they are blue, but they just had like the hoods, and they see Captain Marvel like fly up in front of them, and they're like, "Oh, we'll be back for the weapon."
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. No, that's Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, because that was Ronan with his lackeys. Yeah, and Ronan was the villain in Guardians.
Because I was like, if this has to do with the first Avengers, and they come back for the Tesseract, and they do all that conversation about how important the Tesseract is, nobody talks about this girl that's apparently super powerful that they saw before. But whatever.
Well, and that also ended up being kind of a like a joke for audiences towards Captain Marvel was, why did you never page her when New York was being overrun or when killer robots were trying to rule the world? Or
those seemed like big deals at the time.
And I think, and where was she during this whole time? You literally had a pager that you could just be like, help.
Right. Yeah, it feels very weird. And especially, I guess we can get Endgame too, kind of MacGuffin-y, where she just kind of shows up to help a little bit, just enough to like push the needle, and then leaves again. Like, she's not actually pivotal to the story. She's not pivotal to the story. I mean,
her couple of appearances in Endgame are really, you would chalk them up to being convenient. I would agree with you, but it's like necessary convenience, so I forgive it.
It's just, it would be
because she has to be a part of the fight, so she has to show up at some point.
There's such a huge difference in just a little bit more writing to make something not just appear out of nowhere and move the story forward. It would be, I mean, there are other characters that need to be there or conveniently can do things or conveniently know things, but Doctor Strange has all this backstory that you know why he's there and what he's doing, and all these people who've been introduced relatively recently have more meaning in their scenes.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't think Captain Marvel really means a whole lot to the MCU, even in Endgame, even though she is a part of the fight. I don't think she really does much for the fight. I think her most important part of Endgame is bringing Tony
at the very
home.
beginning.
Yeah. But yeah, we can dive into Endgame. I already said it. I love Endgame. This movie does something to me, and it does it every time I watch it. And I'm constantly like, how does this movie affect me so deeply? And it's because Endgame is so layered and it's got so much going on, and it hits really heavily right off of the bat. Like, we're coming in 22 days after the snap happened. You know, the Avengers are still, they have their searching for screens going up. They're just constantly seeing, well, the surviving Avengers are constantly seeing, like, all these people they've known, all these, I mean, it's 50% of the population's gone. They lost their fight. You've got Tony up in space recording a video message for Pepper, basically telling her, like, I'm being forced to make peace with, I'm going to die in space.
Not coming back.
Like, and it's so, I mean, it's so heartbreaking right from the beginning. You're just like, what the hell? And to open the entire thing, the very, 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 very first scene to open with, which, by the way, this was the first one where they did not start the movie off with the Marvel logo.
Okay.
With the pages, or with the montage of Marvel. It starts off, you know, with Hawkeye teaching his daughter how to shoot the bow and arrow. And then you see his family vanish. And it's just kind of a like, oh man, you didn't have to remind me that the snap happened. We know it happened. And then immediately you go into Iron Man is up in space making peace with his death because he's going to starve in space. And he's still suffering his injury because he got stabbed in Infinity War. And you're like, what the hell? Like, oh my God, it's the gravity is so heavy. And I remember the tension in the theater was like immediately there. Man, that opening night, holy shit. Went to it with the same friends I saw Infinity War, and we were all just like, there was a difference. So when we saw Infinity War, I had joked about, like, Iron Man's gotta die. I put on this, like, we walked into Endgame and we sat down and all of us were just like, shit, man, I'm really nervous.
I hope I survive this.
Not because I didn't think it was going to be good. I think everyone going into Endgame knew this movie's going to be on a whole different scale. It will be good. We just don't know where this is going. And everyone had their theories. Everyone was like, I think I know who's going to die.
The importance of finally breaking that rule where now important people have died. Going into this movie, you're like, I'm pretty sure we're not going to go 100% back to everybody is rescued. It's somebody, maybe several people are going to remain dead, or more people are going to die who had lived. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, like suddenly, Endgame kicks off, and you immediately you understand everybody is fair game now. Thanks to Infinity War,
right?
No one's safe. Like, any one of them can and will go if they need to. And you're like, but we were nervous. We were like, man, I don't know. And then the lights went down, and Hawkeye's with his daughter, and immediately the whole theater's just like, God damn it. Just like, and then we get the Avengers watching all the names and the faces of everyone that vanished, and you're like, you see, I mean, just everything is just so brutal at the beginning of Endgame, and then Captain Marvel shows up, and you got Thor who like is sulking. But man, the more I watch Endgame, the more I am like, I understand Thor, and they finally gave Thor some character. They just did it in a very
comedic way where he's chubby.
Right, but I have a defense for it, and we'll get to it. But before he's chubby, he's sulking, and they're like, Nebula shows up, and she tells him, hey, I know where Thanos went, because he's talked about it for years. He's told me exactly what his plans are post-snap. And so they go, and you find out Thanos is a farmer. By the way, that is comic book accuracy to its finest, because he does become a farmer after he snaps. I mean, which I was so grateful for. Respect for source material. So important when you're making comic book movies. It's so important.
There's so many good ones too that you can kind of just pick all the best pieces and make a great movie.
Right. How did you, when they show up on his garden planet, and it is immediate, Thor hacks his hand off. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah. You get excited, like you're having that vengeance moment, but it's kind of an empty vengeance because it's not solving the issue, and there's nothing you can do, and he's not fighting back, and you don't have that. There's no satisfaction in it, even though you want it so bad.
And he tells them, he's like, I destroyed the stones. I used them to destroy them. And you're like, oh shit, that means everything is going to stay. Like, what the fuck? How does this go? And then Thor hacks his head off, which is like, I get why he does it. I think every audience does.
Yeah.
Like, he had to kill Thanos, but at the same time, you immediately side with Rocket. Rocket just happens to say the line everyone else is thinking. Just like, what did you do? Like, Thanos may have been the only guy that could tell you how to do things, or like reset or
fix this,
save, and you just killed him.
Yeah, so now we're even more up shit's creek now.
Right. And then you get the 5 years later. Seeing the desolate New York, the way they show it in Endgame, felt more real and devastating to me than a lot of movies that have that kind of like abandoned city feel.
They did a good job.
I don't know why. They do. I'm telling you, I don't know what it is about Endgame. It's on a whole nother level of like filmmaking to me, because what a project. Knowing what you're going to have to incorporate, what you're going to have to pull off in 3 hours. It's just
unbelievable. Is your house getting broken into?
I think I couldn't tell if someone knocked on my door or if something fell on the upstairs. Give me a second.
If you don't come back, I'll call the cops. You want to go out?
Okay. So yeah, Endgame, there's a lot of parallels to Endgame that I feel okay. Are very real world parallels. I I want to bring up. I forgot to write the quote down, but so Captain America, I love that they made him kind of doing what Sam did with veterans in Winter Soldier, but now he's doing it with
survivors,
just people in general. Yeah, doing these support groups. Who's Endgame? But he's got this line about like the state of the world and what we need to do. Like being able to we have to move on. We have this chance. We have to do it. I can't remember the actual quote, but yeah, there's such a weird gravity to it. There was a gravity to it watching the movie, but now watching it for me, there's a very real gravity, especially not just this line, but this movie in general with our current state of the world. I feel like Endgame, very important movie. I kind of like in terms of Lord of the Rings, where I think people should watch this because there's some very real or some relevancy to it that I think we need to soak in. Not to get too
it's become more real since then. It was weird very recently in 2020 seeing like city streets, nobody on the streets, really like seeing people drive down and being rather open, very different. It did seem like people had vanished.
It seemed like something, just devastation. And it was, Endgame does such a great job of just showing, for the first time, we're watching all these characters who have been clean cut, strong, physically, mentally. They've won all these crazy battles, these situations. They've been through the shit and they come out fine. You see them all in Endgame. Tony Stark is starved and just basically dying on the mend. When Black Widow has she looks so disheveled, just
kind of trying to hold everything together.
Yeah, you got Steve Rogers, who still looks pretty clean cut, but everything in his facial expression is just, he's still defeated. He has no clue what he's doing. Everyone, Hawkeye has become Ronin. He's now just on a killing spree out of pure anger and hopelessness. It's just seeing these characters in these spots now is very we haven't seen that from Marvel. And I don't know if we're ever going to see it from Marvel again, honestly. I'm still holding the opinion. I don't think we're going to get another movie experience like we did with
I think that it would
MCU.
Be a mistake for them to try to replicate it. I think that
I agree.
are going, it's almost surely going to fail or feel hollow or feel copied or whatever. I think that they kind of have a problem in the short term where Thanos is such a massive, casts a massive shadow. They need to find a way to get out from that and not be immediately compared to it constantly.
Well, it's almost like the only villain that might not stay under the Thanos shadow would be Galactus. But even then, I'm I really feel like Marvel did what they needed to do. They'll make fun movies going forward, but the impact is just not going to be the same, I don't feel. And that's not a bad thing. I don't say that as Marvel's doomed. I say that as Marvel hit something so special that I just don't think it's happening.
That's totally
again.
Okay. Take that and celebrate it and just do whatever makes sense next.
Right. But yeah, Endgame, man, dude, I cannot watch Endgame. I get through most of it, but there are certain scenes during that movie and they're not even fight scenes. It's character scenes. I'm it just destroys the feels, I'm what the fuck? I never, open honesty, which I always am, but I cannot watch Endgame without it's not a sob, but it's genuine crying several times throughout the movie. And I'm every time I feel it coming, I'm motherfucker. you know what's happening. You've seen this thousands of times now. Why are you still doing it? I'm like, only few movies seem to pull this off.
Deeply personally, emotionally invested.
Which is kind of cool as a moviegoer, as a fan, to have that confirmation of like, yep, I love these characters. Yep, this is what I'm into. It's kind of cool. I don't know. Did you see Endgame opening night?
I don't remember. I think it came out late enough that it probably not. I don't think I've seen an opening night movie in a long time. Like I'm not a midnight opening night movie.
Right. Well, Endgame is by far my favorite opening night film I have seen. It is, that experience was like, it was a collective audience experience. This movie was what you go to the theater for. That's what it was. It was really cool. It is monsters and numbers. Stop it.
You're good.
Sorry. The whole film, I mean, throughout the whole movie, the theater responded together. It was like everyone was just going through. I mean, we were going through the journey together, but everyone was going through the same feels. It was so unique. I think it's so fun, though. And it still has like its little quirky moments throughout the movie. But the one-liners in Endgame are not overkill. There's like one that I absolutely hate every time it comes up. But luckily it literally gets like scoffed at and they move on. But Endgame did a really good thing with like, we'll have some one-liners, but they're not going to be the overkill like we've been doing. The whole world gets saved by a rat.
Right.
Think about it. Without that rat accidentally turning on the quantum van,
he would never come back. Yeah.
the events of the movie would never happen. So thank you to that rat. But I thought that was fun that one of the theories going into it was Ant-Man is going to be the one that actually saves the world. And in a way, that fan theory came true in a way, you know, he was the one that was like, why don't we time travel? Why don't we do this? We can get the stones and we can bring everybody back. I thought that was really cool. Seeing Tony with a family and having like a life where he doesn't have to.
Seeing him come back from space and seeing Pepper and realizing, oh, good, Pepper's still here. That was huge. And then, you kind of see him retire to a life of just gratefulness, pure gratefulness that I have my wife, I have my daughter, I don't need anything else, I'm content, was kind of really nice.
Yeah, and the movie has so many beautiful moments and like real character growth with all of these heroes. You know, you got Tony when they show up at his house and they have their quick chat about the time heist, and then Tony's like, hey, here's the thing, you're more than welcome to stay for lunch, but you can't talk shop. You know, we're not talking hero stuff anymore. If you're going to be here, it'll be as friends.
Yeah.
I love that. It's just, God, the movie does so many good things. My brain's like, and I just rewatched it today too. So my brain's like, oh man. I'm trying to remember where I was about to. Oh, okay. So a couple things that the movie did that initially made most audiences kind of weary about at first, but I think people have accepted it. Smart Hulk.
Yeah.
We'll start with Smart Hulk. So this is, for any listeners that might not know, Smart Hulk is actually comic book accurate.
I don't know if you that I did. Jake. I knew that like even talking Hulk was controversial.
Yeah. There was at one point he did make himself smart. So that is comic book accuracy. There was a Smart Hulk.
Which makes sense. It's kind of the combination of Bruce and Hulk being symbiotic.
Right. Which is what he tells him, like, yeah, this is what I did. I just put the brains with the bronze, and this is what we get.
Yeah.
Kind of. I was wary of Smart Hulk when I saw it that opening night, but he's grown on me quite a bit. Now I'm like, dude, I really like Smart Hulk, actually, because it's the first time we've seen Bruce Banner at peace.
That's a good point.
He seems... Yeah, he's peaceful now. He's learned how to process tragedy and move forward, which is kind of
and beautiful.
Huge, considering the majority of the world around him is not processing still and not moving on. So it's kind of neat seeing Hulk being that way, or Bruce Banner being that way. And it's kind of funny that he's the one that helps create the time machine and the one they rely on until Tony shows up to fix the equation. But now I'm going. Okay, so Thor.
I need to know why you think Thor is so good, or at least not bad.
Okay, first time I saw it, I was so disappointed because I was like, "This movie's so perfect. Why did you do this to Thor? You should have made him better." So I disregarded Thor quite a bit during this movie. Having watched it several times, I have to defend their choice because although on the surface he still does some slapsticky things, he's still doing the same Thor humor, which I will say I still wish they hadn't done that to the extent. I wish they would have completely ended it, but whatever. But for the most part, I'm going to defend it because Thor has completely broken apart. He's completely given up. He's become an alcoholic. He's completely isolated himself from the world, and all of the video games and the drunken silliness that you see from him off the bat. It's all this weird kind of projection, kind of defense mechanism that he's created because he's been the god of thunder and he's lost everybody. I mean, if you look at all the characters that Thor has been very close to who have died or are just not around anymore, it's
his whole
everybody.
Family.
And he's had to watch most of them go. So knowing that he did not stop Thanos from killing half the population, Thor has just completely given up. So he's become this alcoholic. He's become just this fat, gross kind of waste of life all of a sudden.
Yeah, very depressed.
So on a very psychological kind of deep level, I have to defend the choice they made for Thor by letting him get to that point because he's just built this very unhealthy barrier, and they kind of gave him the fat suit to show it. But that's my defense is on a psychological level, their choice for Thor, I feel is this is way deeper than what people take from just the surface of, Thor's fat and drunk. Ha 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 ha. To me, when I see him in that scene or the movie, I'm very much like, that's Thor, the god that gave up.
Yeah, that's fair. That's I didn't really remember or think all the way back to the fact that he lost his mom, he lost his dad, he lost his brother, he lost his sister, he lost all these people that were meaningful to him.
Yeah. And then the world that he's been fighting for.
He lost his home. He lost his,
was destroyed. He lost his home. He doesn't have the Avengers anymore. He feels he betrayed them or
failed them.
Let them down completely, not just by not killing Thanos initially, but then by actually killing Thanos at the wrong time for the wrong reason. So Thor has completely just given up, and he's so broken mentally that he's got no hope in him anymore, no self-esteem. So to me, I'm like, shit, that's the way they handled Thor, it was almost like they made Thor the personification of whatever percentage of humans that actively decide not to process
just
emotions or grief or anything. Yeah, so to me, that's what Thor is in Endgame. So that's why I have to defend him. Is I'm like he's where most people would go. But on that first viewing, that first surface, you're like, what the fuck? Thor's supposed to be ripped. What happened?
Yeah, and you want him to be a hero and not be human. I mean, that's part of the problem is you balance heroism with human nature, and he definitely succumbed, and it's an interesting story when that happens. If you're too good or too infallible, it's boring.
So that's my defense for the decision of Thor and Endgame. I don't know if that was the direction the filmmakers were actually going for, but that's how I have perceived his character. So now when I watch Endgame and I see Thor show up, I don't laugh. I'm very kind of heartbroken to see such a magnificent god superhero so low and given up. But he gets his redemption, so it's okay. So the time travel aspect, I think that's super fun using the quantum realm, and they're like, the humor for the time travel is perfect. Telling him like you can't base your theory of time travel off of Back to the Future. And he's like, you mean Back to the Future was bullshit? Yep. So, I liked how Tony brought up, instead of pushing him through time, you guys were pushing time through him. I thought that was an interesting kind of concept that I don't remember hearing in time travel movies before, of like, oh, you kind of did it backwards, so we have to flip that. Endgame does.
Yeah, I like all the time travel parts. I think it's a smart way to go back and revisit all these other places where the stones have been. We've all known, but may have lost track over time, all the places they've been. And so to be able to go back and have these different teams go through different times and find them, try to get them before they get taken in order to reunite them. All the different things that happen, and Tony talking to his dad as like a peer is really, really good. I like that. And Tony's in a completely different place. Like we said, he's a family man, and so he kind of, I think, sees his dad from another perspective now in that brief interaction they have, and that's kind of nice.
And he actually, a little detail that he brings up in a few of the earlier films of he never got to say goodbye to his dad. And then in Endgame, he actually does get to say goodbye to his old man, which is a cool moment. Knowing how Endgame ends, it makes it very like Endgame does a lot of moments with Tony where it concludes certain little plot points for Tony, which we should have all seen coming. That they're gearing up.
It is a very well done send off in that sense that they close all the loops.
Yeah. I think Endgame did something real interesting, and as an audience, I can't believe every audience member fell for it. So everyone got caught up in like the excitement of the Avengers have teamed again. The surviving Avengers have teamed again. They are time traveling to all these different places and times, collect the stones, not to stop Thanos, but to just bring people home, which I think is a pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's interesting. I like that. But one of the places they have to go to is Vormir, which is where the Soul Stone is. And everyone's so caught up in the excitement of like the team is dropping each other off and like headed out. All right, we'll see you in a minute, you know. So Hawkeye and Black Widow go to Vormir. and you see Red Skull there greeting them. And he takes them to the cliff. And as the audience, everyone's still watching. And then you get the very, like, blunt reminder. You don't just get the stone. Someone has to die. And I remember the theater that first night. The whole theater was just immediately, like, excited.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Like,
yeah. This isn't going to go okie dokie.
So, Black Widow, Endgame was like the confirmation that audiences had connected to her way more than I think
100%.
people realized. To me, it was like I've been connected to you for so long. Because when she sacrifices herself, it's like, I mean, it's shattering for that movie.
And you see all of the other characters that we also love who have been connected to her and impacted by her. And so when not only obviously is Hawkeye very distraught by it, but he gets back and Hulk who has had a long experience with her, or like all these people, it's like, wow, I can't believe that we thought that we were done with grief, or we thought that we had hope for a better future, but we're still vulnerable to at any moment.
Right. Like they weren't in a fight, and yet one of them still died. And it's such a like, you feel the whole team when they realize that Natasha does not show back up, that she's dead. The whole team just collectively like deflates all over again. You know, they had that high moment of like, okay, we're doing this, we're on our way, and then it's like, oh god,
and it's in a scenario that you just can't work around. Like, there's no way to use the stones to save her. Like, she's just gone, and it's a very helpless feeling.
Yeah, it's Black Widow's death was like, man, that whole theater, when she died, I remember immediately you hear the whole theater just like emotionally breaking down. My friends and I were all like trying to hold it together, but all of us were doing the like, don't look near each other.
I have something in both my eyes.
Right. Don't let the light reflect the tears welling up. Don't do it. Don't do it. You don't want to wipe your eyes because that'll give it away. You don't want to do the sniffle because that'll give it away. So you just sit still like a rock and you're just like, this is my fate. This is what's happening to me. But it's kind of crazy because when they time travel, the movie's already been going for
a long way,
a couple hours, and you don't realize that it's already been like that.
It moves
much time
very
gone.
well, very quickly.
Yeah, the pacing is awesome because after they show back home and they make the new gauntlet, it's like 5 minutes after that is Thanos from 2014 shows up on Earth. Cool detail about when Thanos shows up, by the way.
I don't know.
Notice this? You know how Ant-Man is watching the birds outside and then he gets blown up? If you watch closely, you see him shrink so that the blast doesn't actually hit him.
That is cool.
Yeah, I always I didn't notice it until this week, actually. I always just took it as he shrunk himself as the building was collapsing on him. But no, he shrinks right when that first missile hits. He's shrinking down. You can see it real fast and real quick.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, bleep, bleep, and he's gone. But getting to what made this such an amazing theater experience is when Thanos shows up. So he sits down, tells Nebula, I'm just gonna wait. Go get me the stones. And then Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man, they show up and they're just watching down, they're looking down at Thanos who's just sitting there waiting for it. And then we get Thor, who has finally all right. Grieving
time to do business now.
Time to do business. He's got Stormbreaker, he's got the hammer. the lightning shows up. He gets his armor back on. And even though he's still Fat Thor, when he gets that armor, dude, I'm like, motherfucker looks intimidating. He looks like a Viking raging god.
He looks pretty
awesome. And then, you know, they confront Thanos and they get ready for their fight. Have you noticed in their fight, every hit that the three of them throw at Thanos?
Yeah, they're all very, very. They've learned their lesson. They know exactly how. They have a plan. They're prepared, and I think it shows.
And their motivation is so high, which they make very. I like that they don't try to be subtle with some of the things. They blatantly tell you, like, there's no higher stakes. We either win or it's all for nothing. Right. They're like, Jesus Christ. And at this point, you don't know what winning is actually going to look like. So it's very
daunting. There's no telling if they lose.
But
if what's going to be different this timeline, different people could be disappeared.
Right.
Like, you don't really, there's no guarantees.
Yeah, you genuinely, I thought that was so brilliant of how they handled that, of like, you as the audience member, for the first time during a superhero movie, you're very much like, I don't know that I can find peace in, well, they'll beat the bad guy. Because you don't know, like, if they do, what the price is, who else is going to die, or if they will actually be able to pull it off. Because then you're like, but we have phase 4 coming up, and who knows, like, they could end this with Thanos still winning, and then phase 4 folk have to be the ones to bring it back. You didn't know. So Thanos fighting those three.
Yeah.
Brutal. He kicks the shit out of them. And watching Cap's shield get cut in half, I mean, it's so like...
Yeah.
But before the shield gets cut in half, one of the theater moments of all time was Thor's getting his face bashed in by Thanos, right? And they do that close-up of the hammer lifting off of the ground. I remember the whole theater, myself included, everyone was like tense watching it, and everyone just like... You know, we all have recliner chairs in theaters now. Yeah. No one was reclining during that. That was a very, like, full attention. What? And then to see Captain America wielding the hammer. And I can't believe a lot of people forgot, but whoever's able to wield the hammer also wields the power of
straight
Thor.
To him.
Right. And a lot of people forgot, because a lot of people were confused why Captain America was suddenly able to throw lightning from the hammer. And it was like, he's got Thor's powers right now. Like, that's fucking cool. But as soon as he, like, catches the hammer, I remember that theater fucking exploded. Oh, my God. I didn't even know that Thor had a line until like the third time I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, everybody's just cheering and so excited and
cheering. So, I mean, it was so like, oh my God, he is worth it. This is awesome, or worthy. This is awesome. And then then he starts getting beat down. And again, all the theories of, will Captain America be the one to die in this one? And you thought that was actually going to happen while he's fighting Thanos, because it looks like he's about to get killed by Thanos. And then you get like one of the most epic shots in movie history of injured, beat up Captain America facing off Thanos and his army by himself. And I'll never forget that whole theater, man. We were just all cheering, and then everyone was like so tense immediately. And then you hear Sam on the intercom saying, on your left. Dude, as the portals open and everyone showed up.
Yeah.
God damn it. I remember everyone in the theater. The cheering got so like, it grew. It was like a slow clap in a movie. It was just growing and growing and growing. And everyone's tearing up. I'm kind of tearing up just like talking about the scene. And then we finally got the payoff. How is it?
Yeah.
2 words are like the payoff that the comic book fans
because they blue balled us
for.
a while ago with when Cap's just like,
right,
yeah, he just
Age
like
of Ultron
starts saying it, and then they cut to the black at the end of the movie.
right, and everyone's like, oh, fuckers. Captain America says Avengers Assemble. Man, that theater
I know.
was pandemonium. It was.
Yeah, it was just so much energy. It was intense.
So intense, and just, oh my god, the whole fight, keeping the gauntlet away from Thanos, everything about it. And I always kind of find it funny. So Marvel makes Captain Marvel to be like their strong female moment. But I always take the quick scene in Endgame to be more empowering than the whole like Captain Marvel film where
I know Christy likes it. She thinks it's cool.
Spidey tells because it's so neat seeing all the women of Marvel like standing together and just being like, yep, we're just doing this. We're going. I love that whole final battle, dude, is like how a superhero final battle should go, where every hero has just like, we have given our last fuck. We're like, it's time to actually power through. So huge, so grand.
And to see all those different characters from all those different movies and times, and it's completely unrelated, even just ones that you know from this. These people I know from this. These people I know from this. They're all there. Everybody showed up. It's massive.
Yeah. And that's just the ones that they focused on. Who knows? And I'm sure we'll be finding out in Phase 4 where all the other Marvel characters are, because there's a shit load of people
they'll
walking
probably
through those
flash
portals.
back to, I was there when we did this.
Yeah, like I'm sure the X-Men will show up. I'm sure the final or Fantastic Four will be somewhere around there. I do like the line between Doctor Strange and Wong, where Doctor Strange is like, is this everybody? And Wong's like, oh, you expected more? I thought that was a fun teaser line to the audience, because that was as Disney was trying to get the 20th Century Fox so that they could have Fantastic Four and X-Men. So I like that little one-liner, because it's just that's a fun fan tease, little Easter egg. Of course, then we get like battles really coming to a head. And I remember being in the theater when Tony looks over at Doctor Strange and Strange does the one. I remember the whole theater, just like everyone knew almost immediately, of just, oh no, we know who's not walking out of the battle. And it was so intense to watch. And me being such a dick during Infinity War.
Regretting your prediction.
Like, Iron Man's gotta go. I'm tired of Iron Man. As soon as I saw Strange give the one, I was like, and I realized what was about to happen. I was like, I'm sitting in my chair, and I just felt everything like, yep, I'm about to cry like a little kid. This is not going to go well for me. Yeah. And sure enough, man, that scene reduced me to nothing.
Yeah, seeing Iron Man finally kind of reach his, I guess, destiny at the end of Endgame is a big deal.
Huge deal. I actually I have in pop the moment. That's one of my most proud pops that I've got. Of course, my daughter hates it, but very sad. Oh man. So his funeral shows up, and just, man, the whole movie, like, you feel great that they won, but it's such like a somber celebration. You almost feel bad for being happy that Thanos dies, just because you're like, but I had to watch these characters die. I had to watch them go through so much suffrage and whatever. Cap, I love Cap's decision.
It's perfect.
It's perfect. I've heard a few people be like, I don't get it. I'm like, what don't you get? He's been told since his first movie to get a life. He's done everything he can. He's saved the world.
Several times.
Helped save the world. Several times. And I don't think he would be able to come back from that kind of battle, you know, the whole thing with Thanos. I just don't think his character would ever be able to bounce back fully.
Yeah, he would
from
still
that,
feel
you know?
guilty or could have done more or whatever. So he just kind of needed that thing for himself. He needed a life.
It needed to be, it needed to be over. Him being married to Peggy is just so...
Yeah. It's very sweet.
It's so
I liked
wonderful.
it a lot.
So I took my daughter to see it. It was funny. She did not want to watch Endgame. She was very scared to see Endgame. But my daughter had grown up watching the MCU.
Right.
She's watched all of them. So she knew these characters. And her and I had like a full discussion about, and I told her, like, it might seem ridiculous. I was like, you've watched these characters for so long. I felt it was important for her to see the conclusion of their stories. I told her, you need to see where they go from here. You need to see because Endgame really shows you kind of heroism, you know, from these characters, the choices, and it's so to me, I felt it was important. She finally agreed, and we managed to get last second seats to go and see it in the theater. And we're in the theater. We had our popcorn. She was like nervous. She goes, "Dad, what if I cry?" And I remember being like,
"I'm gonna cry. Everybody's gonna cry.
It's not a matter of." Yeah, I told her, I was like, you won't be the only one. I promise you, everyone's gonna cry. I was like, dude, I cried the first time. I'm probably gonna cry again during this one. She was like, really? I went, yeah. Don't worry about it. Everyone's gonna cry. You're fine. She was like, okay. We're watching it. She lost it when Black Widow dies. She was just sobbing. And then like the Thanos fight when Cap's getting beat up, she was just so nervous to watch that. But then she saw the portals behind him, and my daughter is sitting in this recliner chair, and she's just so like the relief when all the superheroes show up.
Yeah.
So like, there it is. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, so pure.
Of course, then when Iron Man dies, she lost it during that. And I'm like, it was so goofy. And I blame the movie for this because of the whole I love you 3000 thing. But like when the gauntlet, hits the dirt in front of Iron Man, the second time I saw the movie, as soon as it hit the ground in front of him, I started to well up. I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? You don't need to. You don't need to. And I blame the movie because I'm watching it with my daughter, and it was the whole bond between him and his daughter in Endgame. And then the funeral showed up. You know, he leaves that voice message for his family, and he ends it, you know, I love you 3000. And everyone's crying. The movie finally ends, and the house lights come up. Because Endgame was the first Marvel movie we had that had no post-credit. We got the actual sign-off of the main cast, and that was it. And my daughter, the theater's getting up slowly, and everyone's wiping their eyes and sniffling. And she gets up, she goes, "Dad, everyone's crying. You're crying." I went, "I told you."
Don't lie.
But Endgame, I mean, it's just, that was a true movie experience. And it's crazy because I watch it at home, and I'm still like constantly with this and Infinity War just sucked right back into that experience. And I'm like, minus the little nitpicky one-liners that it's got that I don't feel are necessary. I'm like, this movie is just so perfect. It's so well done. There's so much care and heart to these characters that, man, the Russo brothers, bravo to them.
It's pretty amazing. Like, I don't know what else to even say about it. It's such an incredible thing. It's amazing that it holds up on home video even. Like, it makes sense, of course, that you have that experience in the theater, but for it to continue to be great on multiple viewings, I think that is the test. That is true. Great movie.
It is, and the movie just, God, it blows me away. I didn't mean to do all the talking.
I liked it. I thought it was really good.
I was just like watching it again today. I was like, man, I'm going to get on a roll. I just felt it. I do have a little detail. It's one of my favorite movie details. But you have to pay attention to the dialogue to get it. I'm sure you've noticed this. In fact, you and I may have even already talked about it, not recording. So Thanos' opening scene in Infinity War, when he's on the ship and he's talking to the crew and he's talking about defeat and what losing does and means. And he's like, I understand it. You know, losing is scary. Turns your legs to jelly. And then you jump to Endgame after Tony does the snap. And he's watching his whole army vanish in front of him. He's watching his defeat. He goes a little off balance as he's turning around, and he has to sit down. And it's such a great little bookend for him, because it's like he was using it as an intimidation factor when you first meet him, and now he's actually facing defeat, and you get to see his own words kind of come back against him, where his legs are now jelly. That detail is like, it's that kind of stuff that makes the MCU, minus all the flaws, which there are plenty. I mean, how can you not respect the MCU? Yeah. It's so, it blows me away.
It's crazy what they were able to accomplish. And especially considering how hard it is to make a single good movie with all the moving parts and all of the people that have to sign off and all the people that have to do a good job. It's pretty crazy that you were able to put together a string.
Keeping Tom Holland,
a string of good movies that all led to one of the most emotionally satisfying things that you've ever seen.
Yeah. You know, I said it during our part 1. I actually kind of feel like the MCU has a deeper, or maybe not deeper, but a bigger impact, at least on current audiences, than even like Star Wars. Although Marvel cookie cuttered a lot of stories, a lot of characters, kind of even rehashed a lot of same things. I've seen all the Star Wars films in the theater, and I've never experienced what I experienced during the MCU's run, which isn't over, but it'll be weird whatever they end up calling Phase 4 and beyond, because everyone is going to talk MCU and immediately only think these first few phases. So it's crazy having this much respect for movie, or like this passion for him. But every time I watch him, I just get more invested.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here, how they try to reset and to just start it off with kind of revisiting Black Widow and getting more of that. That will be really fun, I think.
Yeah, I still think
could be better for sure.
Should have given her movie a long time ago, but it is what it is. I am looking forward to seeing it. Did you figure out like a top 5 or anything? I know we had kind of hinted at doing that.
My top 5, probably not surprising based on what we've been talking about. I think I think Winter Soldier is probably my favorite. The first Guardians.
Okay.
And then I put Infinity War and Endgame at kind of the same level. I think you need both equally. And then the first Iron Man is my number 5. Same. Yeah.
Our lists are pretty much
not
the
surprised
same.
at all.
I've got Endgame, Iron Man, the first one, Infinity War, Winter Soldiers, and the first Guardians. These movies, the only other superhero movies that make me feel like this much passion and pride of being a fan of them would be Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy and the Snyder Cut. And then I've got the MCU. And it's just like, there's just something about these films and how these filmmakers are handling the characters. I mean, this is how you need to make
it makes these characters really stand out and stand the test of time. Really, it kind of solidifies them in the pantheon.
And I hope everyone has seen Endgame, but I quickly mentioned it earlier. If you want a little piece of relevancy, like I kept saying, Endgame feels very relevant to me these days. Tony's video message saying goodbye, up to the point where he mentions his daughter. I'm trying to find it real quick, but it's so perfect, especially with everything that happened in 2020, all the bullshit and no one seeing each other. Now we're getting to people are seeing each other and being around each other again, which is really cool. And I'm very happy about that. I'm very excited about that. I can't find the quote. I should have
just go watch Endgame.
Yeah, just go watch Endgame. And Tony's little farewell message is just so on point. It got to me today.
I like those kinds of things. But we did it. Oh my goodness.
MCU.
Can you believe it? I'm excited to get back to watching other movies. I've been binging these for so long, and then I finally get to watch some new movies, and it'll be interesting to see what comes next for us too, as opposed to Marvel.
We haven't even decided yet. You were busy watching a whole slew of new movies. Then you watched a whole bunch I haven't watched yet, so now I have to catch up. God damn
it. So let us know what you think about these movies on Facebook and Instagram at Movie Boners. Or send in a voice message. And you can only have like a minute's worth of voice message, so you can't go on too many rants. But if you need to cancel us, if you need to let us know where we're wrong or set us straight, definitely call in and we'll respond. So we appreciate you listening.
Yep. Tell us your favorites, what moments you loved the most, what ones you hated the most. Do all that good stuff.
See you guys next time. I know.
I'm so tired of talking.
Good.
It's your turn next time.
All right. See you guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody.